Chapter 714. They are together the mole? Everyone looked at each other. Only the two people's eyes flickered, and a trace of shock flashed past their eyes. Zongguang quickly took 2 steps forward. "Aunt, miss, what do you mean by the mole? There's no insider? How can you be so well prepared for your first time stealing?" Yundong sneered. "No, it's not enough. It seems that the insider doesn't know this place very well. But it's definitely not just you. Where are your accomplices?" The two of them immediately denied it. However, they had just lost their teeth and their words were a little blurred. "Don't have an insider. No others. I don't know what you're doing. You're still not crying after seeing the coffin. Then let me see if your bones are really so hard." As Yundong spoke, a cruel smile appeared on his face. The two of them instantly felt their scalps tingle. They had yet to understand what she meant. Yundong suddenly kicked the two of them to the ground. Then, she stepped on one of their ankles and crushed them ruthlessly. "Ah!" A shrill cry like a pig being slaughtered sounded, piercing one's eardrums. Even Big Black, who was receiving treatment not far away, could not help but tremble. Yundong frowned and said to Zhu, "Shut him up." "All right." Zhu stuffed the cloth ball into his gaping mouth. Then, he looked at the other person and asked, "Miss, do we need to shut up this person first?" Yundong looked at him. The man looked at his companion's broken leg in shock. He finally understood what Yundong meant. He was afraid. This woman looked weak and easy to bully, but she was more ferocious than any man present. She seemed to dare to do anything. This time, she had broken his companion's foot. Was she going to break his hand next? His life was more important. When the man saw that Zhu was really going to gag him after Yundong nodded, the pain in his body instantly magnified infinitely. He hurriedly shouted, "I'll tell everything. Don't hit me." Yundong let go of his leg and walked to the other person, ignoring the fact that he had fainted. "Speak." "Yes, it's Dr. Liu. We're in cahoots with Dr. Liu. Dr. Liu should be in Jiao village now." Everyone was stunned when they heard that. The tenants present all knew Dr. Liu. They had always felt that he was a very kind person who treated people for free. Only Zongguang, who had just returned from the Jiao village and already knew Dr. Liu's true appearance, came to a realization. So it was him. Yes, Dr. Liu had been here for 3 days. Although he had never entered the orchard and herb garden, he had walked around the periphery and knew about the existence of Big Black and the others. He also learned some things from the tenants. Therefore, he only knew a little. These two people took advantage of the time when Dr. Liu had lured Shao Qingyuan and Zongguang away from the Jiao village to steal the herbs in the herb garden. Yundong knew what she wanted to know and also beat them up. Although she was still angry, she stopped. She clapped her hands and got Zhu to cover his mouth again. Then she said to Zongguang, "Send them to the officials." A tenant immediately said, "No, it won't be a crime even if they're sent to the government." They actually wanted to beat them up one by one. At the very least, they wanted them to suffer and learn a lesson. However, they were beaten up so badly now. If they attacked again, would they kill them? Yundong laughed. Since he's Dr. Liu's accomplice, he will definitely be convicted. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 715. Sneaking Zongguang. Yundong ignored the two of them and asked Zhu to send them to the officials with the tenants. She walked back to the herb garden. Shao Qingyuan turned to look at her. "Are you done venting? Does your hand hurt?" As he spoke, he took out a bottle of ointment. This ointment has the effect of reducing swelling, bruises, and pain. Apply it first. When Zongguang, who followed them out, heard this, his face could not help but twitch. Yundong did not take the ointment. "It's fine. There's no need to apply it. How's Big Black?" "Fortunately, his life is not in danger." The vet wiped the sweat off his forehead and sighed. "But the injury on his leg is a little serious. I'm afraid he won't be able to walk smoothly in the future." Yundong squatted in front of Big Black again. Perhaps it understood the vet's words, but the light in its eyes slowly dimmed. The fur around its wound had been shaved off, making it look a little strange. After the veterinarian treated Big Black, He asked someone to carry the wooden board with Big Black on it to the farmstead. Gu Yundong looked at it lying there and felt depressed. After a long time, she returned to the manor with Shao Qingyuan. Shui Zongguang got someone to clean up the herb orchard and orchard before hurriedly following. However, as soon as he entered the courtyard, he rushed towards the room where the three of them lived. After entering the house, Shui Zongguang did not have time to wipe his sweat, and he rummaged around in the cabinet. After a while, he took out a key and opened the box. He took out a small paper bag. Then, he took a small paper bag into the small kitchen not far away and brought over the kettle that was boiling on the stove. He poured 2 glasses of water. He was in a hurry, and there was sweat on his forehead as if he was too nervous. This made Tong Shui Tao, who was about to enter the kitchen, feel especially strange. She kept feeling that the steward of this manor was acting suspiciously and definitely had evil intentions. Therefore, Tong Shui Tao quietly hid outside the kitchen and stared at him. Shui Zongguang did not realize it. After he poured the water, he felt that something was missing. A moment later, he patted his head, opened the cupboard, and took out a small porcelain jar. There was white sugar in the small porcelain jar. Shui Zongguang poured some into the cup. Finally, he took out the small paper bag from his sleeve. After opening it, he gritted his teeth and shook it all into one of the cups. Tong Shui Tao, who was outside the door, widened her eyes in shock. What did this Shui guy want to do? Could it be that he planned to pour 2 cups of tea for young Master Shao and his daughter? Tong Shui Tao was so angry that her face turned red. As expected, he was not a good person. The stuff in that paper bag must be poison. Was he trying to poison mist to make way for his daughter? No, that wasn't right. He would have to go to jail even if he poisoned his master. He must have wanted to paralyze her. Tong Shui Tao pursed her lips tightly. Seeing that Shui Zongguang was about to come out, she quickly turned around and hid. She would personally expose his scheme in front of young Miss and young Master later. Tong Shui Tao snorted and carefully followed behind Shui Zongguang. Then, Shui Zongguang walked out of the kitchen but did not go to the central room. Instead, he went in another direction. Finally, he stopped at the door of a room and knocked on the door with a cup of tea. Footsteps quickly came from inside, followed by Madame Wan's face. Father, why are you here? Madame Wan asked softly. Is everything all right in the herb garden? Shui Zongguang shook his head. Everything is fine now. Then he looked at Shui Qin, who was still angry, sitting on the edge of the bed and sighed slightly. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 716. You killed her? When Shui Qin saw him enter, she snorted coldly and turned her body to the side, not even looking at him. Shui Zongguang's heart ached when he saw that the finger marks on her face had not disappeared. After putting the teacup on the table, he said softly, Qiner, it's my fault today. I shouldn't have hit you. Humph. Shui Qin's expression softened a little when she heard her father, who had always been domineering, apologize to her. Madame Wan also hurriedly said, All right. There's no overnight grudge between father and daughter. Qiner is also in the wrong. Let's let this matter pass. Let's not mention it anymore. Shui Qin wanted to say that she was not in the wrong. So what if she admired her master? When she became her master's concubine in the future, her family would rise with the tide. She was doing this for her parents' own good. However, Madame Wan kept winking at her. She also knew that now was not the time to push her luck. She had to take it slow to change her father's mind. Hence, she nodded softly. I don't blame father either. It's good that you don't blame me. Shui Zongguang handed her a cup. This is sugar water. Take it as my apology. Drink it and show that you forgive me, okay? Okay. Shui Qin thought that her father still doted on her after all. Otherwise, why would he make such precious sugar water for her to drink? Hence, she became more confident in persuading him and marrying her master in the future. She was happy and drank the sugar water in one go. However, not long after she finished drinking, she suddenly felt a little dizzy and her eyelids were heavy. After a while she said uncontrollably, Father, Mother, I want to sleep for a while. As soon as she finished speaking, she fell onto the bed. Ah! Madame Wan was shocked and quickly pushed her. Qiner, what's wrong? What are you shouting for? Shui Zongguang glared at her and took away the cup that Shui Qin had left on the bed. Madame Wan was stunned. Seeing that he was not worried at all and was still moving slowly, she thought of the cup of sugar water just now. What else did she not understand? She looked at him in disbelief. You killed her? She's our only daughter. How dare you kill her? Madame Wan was no longer afraid of him. She rushed up and wanted to fight him to the death. Shui Zongguang turned to the side. All right, what's with the fuss? Who killed her? She just drank some calming tea and fell asleep. Look carefully. Madame Wan was stunned and quickly reached out to check under Shui Qin's nose. As expected, her daughter was still breathing, and she immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she looked at her husband resentfully. What are you doing? Why did you give her some calming tea for no reason? What else? Should we wait for her to go to young master's place in the middle of the night and do something shameless? Madame Wan was shocked, and her expression instantly became unnatural. Her husband indeed knew their daughter very well. Just before Shui Zongguang came, Shui Qin was indeed trying her best to persuade her to help her fulfill her wish. After all, this was a rare opportunity. If young master left tomorrow, he might never come again. Madame Wan was not an opinionated person and was almost convinced. Unexpectedly, Shui Zongguang decided to take drastic measures and let her sleep until tomorrow morning. Shui Zongguang snorted. Why are you still standing here? Go to the kitchen and make dinner. Madame Wan left dejectedly. Only then did Shui Zongguang look at Shui Qin, who was lying unconscious on the bed. He sighed slightly, covered her with a blanket, and left the room, locking the door behind him. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 480. Chapter 480. Hooking his neck with one hand, Sylvan Chaney and Jasmine Yale walked a long while on Maple Mountain. Jasmine was lost in the enchanting scenery and didn't feel tired at all. It was truly beautiful. Do you want to see more? If you do, I can have lunch brought over, Sylvan asked for her thoughts. Jasmine shook her head. Let's go back. I want to return to my rental. She hadn't been back to that little cottage in a long time. It was unclear when Pei En would be able to return. The place was lonely and deserted. Don't go back there. I bought you an apartment in the city center. It's convenient to go anywhere, Sylvan proposed. I don't want it. She shook her head again. She truly did not want anything from Sylvan Chaney. She did not want his compensations. If she wanted an apartment, she could save up for it herself. Though it would take many years, it gave her a sense of security. You reject everything I offer. Are you trying to cut all ties with me? Accept what I give you. Sylvan's face darkened with displeasure. I can buy my own house. I used to earn quite a lot in Singapore. I'll save up slowly and eventually buy a house. Jasmine replied, her eyes wide. Buy it yourself? Fine, buy it yourself, Sylvan retorted angrily, his face soured. He knew this girl was stubborn. But he hadn't expected her to reject everything he offered. It wasn't just the house, but the bracelet he had gifted her before as well. In those 12 years, she rarely ever asked him for anything. Even buying a box of candy needed much consideration. He had said that he would give her anything she wanted. But she never asked him for anything. The feeling was far from pleasant. What use was it for him to earn all that money? Jasmine Yale was unclear about why he was angry, and casually said, I find girls like Nolan quite good. She's from a well-off family, she is beautiful, and still works hard. That's because Zayden Santos would leave her one day, replied Sylvan sharply. Jasmine was taken aback. Why? Then why did they decide to get married in the first place? Mr. Chaney, your friend is quite despicable, Jasmine complained, infuriated. Birds of a feather flock together? You and Nolan are close? No. If not, what doesn't have to do with you? Sylvan was visibly infuriated. She would rather show concern for someone she just met than engage in conversation with him. Jasmine was speechless and stopped pressing further. She too was somewhat angered. Why was Sylvan Chaney yelling at her when she hadn't said anything wrong? She knew he had a bad temper. Frustrated, she walked down the mountain. Not caring that it was still snowing, she went directly into the snow. The icy snowflakes landed on her face, but she didn't find it cold. Just A little tired.
Spoiled, muttered Sylvan as he opened his umbrella and advanced towards her with large strides. Upon reaching her, he handed her the umbrella.
Hold this. The next second, he scooped her into his arms. Hey! Jasmine was taken by surprise. Put me down. Hold on tight. If you fall, I won't take responsibility. I can walk by myself. After walking so much, aren't you tired? Not tired, Jasmine lied. In truth, she was a bit tired, coupled with her menstruation ongoing. But she never thought that Sylvan would carry her down the mountain. Even during those 12 years, he had never once carried her. For a moment, Jasmine was dazed. Even if you're not tired, I won't let you walk anymore, Sylvan spoke indifferently. With one hand around his neck and the other holding the umbrella, Jasmine was halfway in his arms. Shielded from the snowflakes by the large umbrella, it was calm and undisturbed. When she was close to him, she could clearly smell his scent, discreet and deep. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 7:18. Abandoned. Young master, this is for you. Zhu wiped its mouth and handed it to Shao Qingyuan. Then, it looked at him expectantly. Shao Qingyuan didn't think much of it at first. After accepting it and taking a closer look, he exclaimed, "Where did you get it?" "I found it in Dr. Liu's medicine basket." Zhu chuckled. The medicine basket was sent to the government office as physical evidence. As expected, the county magistrate found a doctor to examine it. However, the doctor only flipped through the top 2 layers of herbs and confirmed that they were useless weeds. There might be some herbs mixed in, but they were not worth much. Then, the county magistrate convicted Dr. Liu and asked them to sign on the documents. The matter was resolved. As for the medicine basket, it was filled with useless grass that would rot in a day or two, so the county office servants planned to pour it as garbage. Zhu saw that there was actually a herb under the herb basket. He had been by Shao Qingyuan's side for so long and more or less knew some of herbs. He immediately brought the herb back. "I'm not sure either. It just looks like it." "Young master, is this the Hongming you mentioned?" Shao Qingyuan nodded.
"Yes, I didn't expect him to dig up a treasure."
Hongming. Yundong felt that this herb sounded familiar. Shao Qingyuan said, "These are the medicinal herbs recorded in the medical book Dr. Song gave me. They are mainly used for clearing the eyes." In that case, it was also a very precious medicinal herb? Shao Qingyuan put it away and praised, "Not bad, you deserve praise." Zhu's eyes lit up and she quickly buried his head in his food.
That night, the few of them rested in the manor before preparing to leave the next day.
Yundong frowned slightly when she saw Big Black lying on the ground. After a night of recuperation, Big Black looked much better. It had a strong recovery ability and used good medicine. It had already tried to stand up. However, just as the vet had said, Big Black's leg was too injured to land on the ground. It would probably limp in the future. "I want to go to the Yuan family and tell Yuan Cheng about Big Black." "All right, I'll go with you." Yundong asked Tong Shui Tao and the others to prepare the carriage and wait at the door while she and Shao Qingyuan walked towards the Yuan residence. The Yuan family was not far from the manor. It did not take long for the two of them to approach the entrance of the Yuan family. However, before the two of them could knock on the door, they heard Yuan Cheng's familiar voice from inside. "I don't agree. I want to keep Big Black. Even if it can only retire at home in the future, I won't abandon it." Yundong was surprised and could not help but look at Shao Qingyuan. Immediately after, another sigh came from the courtyard. From the sound of it, it might be Yuan Cheng's father. "Ah Cheng, can you not be so stubborn? I know you have a good relationship with Big Black, but it's already crippled. It won't be able to walk steadily in the future. It definitely won't be able to guard that orchard like Big Yellow and the others to scare off the thieves. However, it eats a lot. We can't afford to keep it anymore. The owner has given us money. Why can't we afford it?" Father Yuan frowned. "The owner did give you money, but don't you only have 2 dogs now? How can 2 dogs be enough in such a big herb garden? You definitely have to raise another one. Won't this Big Black eat and drink for free? In the past, it could enter the back mountain to hunt some wild chickens and rabbits, but now, do you think it can do it?"
If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 719. Sorry Mother Yuan immediately made the decision. It's not like we don't want Big Black anymore. We're just sending it away for someone else to raise. Can't you just bring another dog back and nurture it? Your aunt has already said that Big Black can go to her house. Yuan Cheng suddenly raised his voice. Nonsense. Why are you looking at the house? Mother, you clearly know that Cousin Wei Kai was so frightened by Big Black in the past that he peed his pants. He hates Big Black to the core and wants to beat it to death with a stick every time he sees it. You even sent Big Black to Eldest Aunt's house. Let me tell you, if you send it over today, they will eat Big Black tomorrow. What are you saying? How rude. Your uncle is not such a person. Yuan Cheng only sneered. Gu Yundong could not take it anymore. She raised her head and knocked on the door twice. Yuan Cheng did not move, and Mother Yuan was also angry. Only Father Yuan sighed and came over to open the door. Seeing the two people standing outside the door, he was immediately stunned. He hurriedly retreated half of his body and said, "Boss, why are you here? Quick, come in." Yuan Cheng and Mother Yuan suddenly came back to their senses and hurriedly welcomed them. They took stools and made tea. But Gu Yundong stopped them. "There's no need. We're here to ask your family for your opinion." The three members of the Yuan family were stunned for a moment. "Miss, please speak." "It's like this. Big Black was injured yesterday to protect the herb garden. Now that its legs are inconvenient, I'm afraid it can't continue to stay in the herb orchard in the future." When Yuan Cheng heard this, he immediately felt a little desperate. Even Lady Gu had said so. Was she planning to give up on Big Black? Unexpectedly, Gu Yundong's next sentence made his eyes light up. "No matter what, Big Black is a hero. We're really touched by its actions. Now that it's crippled, we can't ignore it. So, we want to take it away. What do you think?" Yuan Cheng was stunned and asked anxiously, "Take it away? Where to?" "Of course I'm bringing it home." Gu Yundong did not have this plan at first because Big Black had grown up here. It had a good relationship with Big Yellow and the others, and it had a deep relationship with Yuan Cheng. It would not be appropriate to bring it away. However, after hearing the Yuan family's words just now, she thought that nothing good would happen if Big Black continued to stay. Gu Yundong liked Big Black very much. She felt that perhaps it would be good to bring it back to Yongfu village. Yuan Cheng could not bear to leave. He had always slept with Big Black in the past. He was the saddest when something happened to Big Black. However, he was worried that he couldn't protect Big Black. His parents didn't want to keep it anymore, and Big Black was injured. What if his cousin hit it with a stick again? He was afraid that when he came home one day, Big Black would be sent away or beaten to death. Then, he would definitely regret it. Hence, when he heard Gu Yundong's request and recalled the scene of her interacting with Big Black yesterday, she gritted her teeth and nodded. "Okay." Father and Mother Yuan naturally wouldn't say anything. Although Eldest Aunt really wanted to take Big Black away, the person who wanted the dog now was the boss. Their family was working for the boss, so they couldn't refuse at all. Since they had agreed, Gu Yundong did not stay any longer and left the Yuan residence with Shao Qingyuan. Yuan Cheng followed them out. When they arrived at the manor, he ran to see Big Black first. When Big Black was carried onto the carriage by Tong Shui Tao, he cried even harder. "I'm sorry. I'm useless. I can't even protect you. You'll definitely lead a better life with the boss in the future. You have to be obedient. The boss will take good care of you." If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 720. Find you a wife. Big Black was very intelligent. It seemed to understand Yuan Cheng's words. It immediately wanted to stand up, but Yuan Cheng stopped her. "If there's a chance in the future, I'll visit you. You have to be fine, understand?" Big Black whimpered, then barked. Each bark was louder and more excited. Its eyes were filled with anxiety, sadness, and uneasiness. Yuan Cheng immediately cried in grief. "Don't be like this. I've let you down." Tong Shui Tao was also extremely sad as she watched from the side. She wiped her tears. For a moment, Gu
Gu Yundong felt that she was the evil person who had separated them. Her heart was in a mess. After a while, she went forward and patted Big Black's head. "Don't worry. I'll bring you over when you've recovered to meet your friends can do it." Big Black liked her very much. It was very sensitive to the kindness of the human in front of it. Hence, he whimpered twice and stopped. Yuan Cheng said a lot more to it and hugged it reluctantly for a while. By the time the group set off, it was already past dawn. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan were in a carriage. Big Black was also lying in the carriage, but it looked a little listless. Gu Yundong spoke to it. "All right, don't be unhappy. When we reach Yongfu village, I'll find you a wife. How about that?" Shao Qingyuan. No one knew if Big Black understood her or not, but it raised its eyes slightly to look at her. Gu Yundong chuckled, her expression somewhat wretched. As they set off late, they took a detour back from the farmstead. In addition, Big Black was injured, so the carriage slowed down a lot. Therefore, when they arrived at Fengkai County, it was already the morning of the second day. Gu Yundong wanted to go back as soon as possible, so she did not delay in the county. However, when she passed by the entrance of Gus, she still stopped and lifted the curtain to look into the shop. Zhuangzi was not around. It was unknown if he had gone to the backyard or elsewhere. Only Chen Jinkai was busy in the shop. He was quite diligent. Even if there were no customers and the shopkeeper was not around, he did not stop to rest for a while. He took a cloth to wash and wipe things seriously. Zhang Bao, the shop assistant in the pharmacy next door, was also very diligent. He was pounding the medicine with a pestle, shaking his head happily. It was probably because he had just gotten engaged to Zhuangzi's sister, Lan Huar, not long ago. The two shops looked fine. Gu Yundong was relieved and asked Tong Shui Tao to drive the carriage back. After entering Yongfu village, Gu Yundong suddenly felt like she was eager to return home. Beside him, Big Black perked up a little. Its ears twitched, as if it was listening to the sounds outside. Gu Yundong smiled and said, "This is where you will live in the future. When your legs are better in the future, you can go to the mountains to take a look. Behind our house is the foot of the mountain. It's very convenient." Big Black turned its head and glanced at her. After entering the village, the carriage slowed down. Gu Yundong lifted the curtain and looked out. She saw a mother and son walking in front of her. Hearing the sound of the carriage, the two of them quickly stood to the side. Just as the carriage passed by them, Gu Yundong suddenly heard one of them say something. "I've already told you that it's too late to come to the Gu family workshop today." Gu family workshop? Gu Yundong was not the only one. Tong Shui Tao, who was driving the carriage, also slowed down and listened. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 721. You have to control yourself. Gu Yundong lifted the curtain at the back of the carriage and looked out. The two of them did not care when they saw the carriage slow down. They only thought that it was because the village road was too narrow that the carriage was moving slowly. They didn't look like they were from Yongfu village, so they didn't know Tong Shui Tao and the others. However, she lowered her voice. "Then the Gu family workshop was recruiting yesterday. If we come today, they definitely won't want you anymore. Tell me, why did you specially make a trip? You're so tired." The woman who spoke looked a few years older than Madame Yang. The person walking beside her should be her son. He looked fair and refined, but his body was a little thin. From what they said, they were applying for jobs at the Gu family's workshop. However, this young man did not look like he was good at work. It was as if he could not even lift a bucket of water. When the youth heard his mother's words, he was a little annoyed. "Mother, that's enough. I've already said that if you heard that the Gu family was recruiting again, you should have told me earlier. However, you just had to hide it from me. If you had told me yesterday, would we have missed this opportunity?" The woman was a little dissatisfied. "What's there to tell you? Why don't you take a look at your own status? You're an elementary scholar and you're knowledgeable. In the future, you'll take the high scholar examination and become an official. You're not studying at home for no reason, but you have to come to a small workshop in the village to find work. Have you become stupid from studying?" Gu Yundong was surprised. He was actually a scholar? And an elementary scholar? It was not that Gu Yundong looked down on her own workshop,
But based on the current situation, her small workshop should not be able to attract a scholar to work, right? Gu Yundong was a little confused and could not help but take a few more glances at the young man. However, before she could take a closer look, a pair of hands suddenly appeared in front of her and blocked her vision. Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment before she heard Shao Qingyuan's deep voice. Is he very good-looking? Huh? The voice was very close, and it sounded like he was gritting his teeth. Gu Yundong could clearly hear the jealousy in his tone. For some reason, she was in a good mood. She pulled his hand down, her eyes crinkling with laughter. Not as good-looking as you. Shao Qingyuan's body suddenly froze. A wave of frustration surged up, making his throat go dry. He suddenly reached back with one hand to cover the big black eyes that were curiously turning in his direction. His other hand wrapped around Gu Yundong's waist and pulled her tightly into his arms. Gu Yundong was surprised. The next moment, she felt a warmth in her ear and was gently bitten. She suddenly shuddered, and the blood in her body instantly boiled. F***ck, this man. However, Shao Qingyuan had already let go of her. He turned his head and said to Tong Shuitao, "Hurry up." The carriage arrived at a spacious place and sped up in an instant. Shao Qingyuan turned around and met Gu Yundong's shining gaze. He coughed lightly and felt a little uncomfortable. I'm just reciprocating. If he was jealous, so be it. To hell with reciprocating. Gu Yundong snorted and reached out to rub his face. You have to control yourself. I'm not of marriageable age yet. Shao Qingyuan was speechless. You were the one who kissed me first. However, he smiled and said, you'll be coming of age next month. You'll be fine then? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 722. The Nest of the Bedham? Next month? So soon? Gu Yundong was in a daze when she realized that time had passed in a flash. She had been in Yongfu village for almost a year. Miss, we're home. Tong Shuitao's voice came from outside. Gu Yundong looked up at Shao Qingyuan, who was still waiting for her answer. He chuckled and jumped off the carriage. Help me carry Big Black in. Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but laugh. He was actually a little resentful that time had passed too slowly. He felt that it was too cold when he built such a big house. He only lacked a mistress at home. If only they could get married as soon as possible. He got out of the carriage and carried Big Black down. Tong Ping had already told them about Gu Yundong's return, so Madame Tong and her daughter-in-law had already prepared the room. The moment Gu Yundong entered, she instantly felt relaxed. She put away the things she had brought from the prefectural city. When she saw Shao Qingyuan carrying Big Black in, she immediately got busy making a nest for it. Father Tong wanted to take over, but Big Black had just arrived at an unfamiliar place and was still uneasy. His entire body was on guard, and he kept shrinking back. Gu Yundong could only let Father Tong go out first, indicating that she could do it with Shao Qingyuan. Currently, the conditions were limited. Gu Yundong wanted to make a simple nest for it to live in. Later, she would find a carpenter to build a wooden house for Big Black. No matter what, it would be a member of the family in the future. They had to take good care of it. Shao Qingyuan looked at Big Black enviously. He also wanted a nest, the kind of nest that was already a bed. He turned around and went out to get the big basket. There seemed to be one in the backyard. He should be able to use it for Big Black to sleep for the time being. He had just walked out of the door when he saw Tongan rushing over. When he heard that Gu Yundong was back, he hurried over to report his work. However, before she could step through the door, she heard a voice from outside. Is this the Gu family? We're here to look for work. Shao Qingyuan immediately guessed that it was the mother and son from before. He immediately said to Tongan, go and take a look. If they're not suitable, just send them away. Tongan was stunned. He subconsciously turned around and left. However, after taking a few steps, he felt that something was amiss. Why did it sound like young Master Shao really hoped that the person who came was not suitable? However, Tongan also felt that it was inappropriate. He had already released the news about the recruitment the day before yesterday. It had already ended yesterday. The other party had only arrived today, making people feel that they did not take him seriously. Tong An's first impression was not good, But he did not expect the other party to be an elementary scholar. After all, talents were rare. The workshop was filled with farmers, and there were not many who could read. The other party was an elementary scholar, so Tongan felt that he could still consider the application appropriately. If the man really stayed, the workshop might be able to attract more well-educated people in the future. Gu Yundong naturally heard that cry, but she did not care. It was agreed that the first round of recruitment would be handed over to Tong En, even if the other party was a knowledgeable elementary scholar. She did not intend to interfere. If the elementary scholar passed Tong An's assessment, Gu Yundong would just have to wait and see. She only took the basket from Shao Qingyuan. This basket was very big and not tall. Even with big black size, it could completely fit in. Gu Yundong had placed an old and unused blanket and some clothes under it. They were all clean and soft. She stretched out her hand and tested it. When she felt that it was okay, she let Big Black in. Unexpectedly, a sharp cry suddenly came from outside. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 723. Do you not have a mouth? Why don't you want my son? My son is an elementary scholar. He's knowledgeable and capable. If you want those bumpkins, why can't you want my son? The woman's voice was a little loud. Tongan did not expect her to suddenly become so agitated. He immediately wanted the two of them to leave, but the woman had already shouted inside, Boss Gu, quickly come out, right? You manager is not good people. He's afraid that my son is an elementary scholar who has the ability to snatch his position. He actually doesn't allow my son to come to the workshop to work. My son is an elementary scholar. An elementary scholar. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other and shrugged helplessly. Let's go out and take a look. Tongan was furious. He had really underestimated the mother and son. This woman actually sat on the ground and did not leave. He immediately wanted to get someone to chase them out, but Gu Yundong had already come out. She glanced at the madam sitting on the ground, then at the fair youth, and suddenly laughed. Your mother is sitting on the ground. Aren't you going to help her? The young man looked a little embarrassed. He quickly went forward and wanted to help the woman up. The woman snorted and looked at Gu Yundong. Who are you? I want to see Boss Gu. I am she. The woman was stunned. She had heard that the eldest daughter of the Gu family was in charge of the Gu family's workshop, but she did not expect to see such a weak-looking woman. Wasn't the boss supposed to be a tigress with a ferocious aura that could intimidate men? When the young man heard this, he helped his mother up even more anxiously. Mother, stop making a scene. The woman stood up unwillingly. Only then did Gu Yundong look at Tongan. What happened? Miss, this gentleman wants to work in the workshop. However, the conditions are a little high. Right after Tongan said that, he heard the woman's raised voice. How are the conditions high? My son is an elementary scholar. If he works here as an accountant, his monthly salary will only be 5 taels a month. How is that high? Boss Gu, don't listen to his nonsense. I think he treats my son as a threat to his position, so he rejects my son with an excuse. Gu Yundong waved her hand, as if she did not want to hear what the woman had to say. She looked at the young man and asked, Your mother said that you're an elementary scholar, right? That's right. Gu Yundong smiled. Since you're an elementary scholar, you're naturally knowledgeable. Why don't you go to the county city to find work? Even if you don't become a teacher in a rich family, those shops should want you, right? Why do you have to come to a small workshop like mine that has only been open for less than a year to be an accountant? This young man looked to be around 20 years old. He was already an elementary scholar at such a young age, which meant that he was indeed talented. The young man was still hesitating when the woman shouted again. Why? My son is just... Don't you have a mouth? You keep letting your mother answer questions for you? The woman was stunned, and a trace of embarrassment flashed across the young man's face. He quickly said, I heard that the Gu family's workshop has good benefits and high wages, so I came to look for work. Gu Yundong smiled and shook her head. No matter how good the benefits are, it's just a small workshop. If you don't want to tell the truth, you can leave. After saying that, she turned around and left. The young man immediately panicked. Wait. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 724. Whoever hires him is an idiot. Gu Yundong paused and turned to look at him. The young man tugged at his fingers. Independent Illinois, just tell the truth. I'd like to hear the details. The young man gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, although I'm an elementary scholar, I'm not good with words. Previously, I did want to go over and be a teacher, but I couldn't speak the moment I met a student. In the end, I could only give up. Later on, I went to the shops in the county city and thought of being a bookkeeper, but the salary given by those shops was too little. Then, I heard that the Gu family's workshop has good benefits and can even cover accommodation, so I wanted to come over and give it a try. Although I'm not very good at talking, my title as an elementary scholar is real. Don't worry about this. Gu Yundong lowered her eyes as she listened. When the young man was done, she nodded slightly. Yes, I understand. You can go back. What do you mean? Our workshop doesn't intend to hire you. The young man panicked. Why? I'm an elementary scholar. Gu Yundong found it funny. So what if he was an elementary scholar? Could it be that the title of an elementary scholar was a pass? Then why did he have to come to a small workshop like hers when he could not find work elsewhere? Because you're not the type of accountant I want? What type of accountant do you need? Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and glanced at the young man before turning to leave. The young man was indignant. Miss, can you make yourself clear? This time, Tongan no longer had any worries. He directly called out to Tong Shui Tao and asked her to carry the woman who wanted to sit on the ground and cry out. He also dragged the young man out of the Gu family. There were still people watching the commotion at the entrance of the Gu residence. When they saw that the mother and son had been chased out, they quickly pointed at them. The woman was thick-skinned, but the young man could not take it. Although he was unwilling, he still fled a moment later. Tongan sneered and then ran to look for Gu Yundong. He was also a little puzzled. Miss, why didn't you hire that young man? Tongan didn't agree because the young man's gaze was very disdainful when he spoke to him. No matter how amiable he appeared, his arrogance was still extremely uncomfortable. Most of the long-term workers in the Gu family's workshop were farmers. If this elementary scholar continued to have such an attitude, he would probably cause a huge conflict with the people in the workshop. Tongan did not plan to hire this young man because of this consideration. However, when the young man saw the young lady, he was very humble and had a good attitude. He completely looked like he was following the young lady. However, Miss still chased him out without hesitation. Gu Yundong said as she fed Big Black, because I gave that young man 2 chances, and he was lying. He was not likable to begin with, and he even had a mother who was a burden. In the end, he was full of lies. Whoever hires him will be a fool. Lies. Gu Yundong left the house and said to Tong En, he's an elementary scholar. He's so young, which means that he has a bright future ahead of him. There are many wealthy families in our county. There must be some shrewd rich masters who are interested in his future and are more or less willing to bet on him. Even if he doesn't, if he goes to a shop to find work, there will be owners who are willing to hire him as accountant. Although 5 taels of silver a month is a lot, it's really too much. Moreover, there's still room for bargaining. I don't believe that he won't be able to find a job like this. Tongan was enlightened. Then why did he come to our workshop? I don't know if there's something wrong with him or if he has other motives. Gu Yundong sighed faintly. There was no choice. The tallest tree attracts the wind. Who asked her shop to be too popular? Even with Qin Wenzheng's protection, there were always people who wanted to find out. For example, the Xian residents. Go back and ask around. Yes. Tong An's entire body trembled, and he instantly felt that he had a heavy responsibility. Let's go. Bring me to the workshop first and tell me what happened at home during this period of time. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 725. Pregnant Gu Yundong went to wash her hands and asked Tong Shui Tao to take good care of Big Black. Shao Qingyuan also went back first. He had to deal with the herb that Zhu had brought him. When the people at the Gu family's entrance saw Gu Yundong come out, they wanted to go forward and say a few words.
One of them wanted to work in the Gu family's workshop, but was rejected by Tong En. However, those who did not dare to retort loudly in front of Tong and did not dare to speak when they saw Gu Yundong. Hence, they could only watch as the two of them walked further and further away. As Tong En walked, he recounted everything that had happened in the past half a month. The two young masters are doing well in the school. A few days ago, young master got the top 3 in the test at the beginning of the month. Young master was extremely happy. He even said that if he gets first place the next time, he will be rewarded by the teacher. Young cousin master is also very hard-working in his studies. He has made great progress. He didn't say what rank Bien Yuanji got, so it shouldn't be too high. Gu Yundong knew this in her heart. After all, she had entered school late and had a weak foundation. To her, it was already a little difficult to keep up with the teacher's lecture. However, it's been very strange these past 2 days. Young master and young cousin master have been going into the kitchen and saying that they want to learn how to cook. No matter how we persuade them, they won't tell us the reason. Gu Yundong was surprised. Yunxu and Yuanji were going into the kitchen? What was going on? It seemed like she had to ask the 2 little ones properly after school. Everything is fine at home. Also, my sister-in-law is pregnant again. Gu Yundong stopped in her tracks and asked in surprise, "Really?" "Yes, she just saw a doctor yesterday. This is a joyous occasion. It's worth celebrating." The Tong family did not have many children. Tong Shui Tao was the only one in her generation. She was already so old this year and did not have any siblings. Tongan had been hurt before, and others did not know if he would get married and have children in the future. Hence, wasn't it a joyous occasion for the Tong family to have a new member? Gu Yundong reckoned that when little Peach found out, she would be overjoyed. After explaining the Gu family situation, Tongan started talking about the people in Yongfu village. The Zhang family's days were getting better and better. Madame Dong's brothers, who had not been around much in the past, had also been especially diligent recently. Especially since the Gu family's workshop recruited workers yesterday. They had practically stayed in the Zhang family's house and refused to leave. Unfortunately, although Madame Dong did not have a strong personality, she was also a principled person. She knew what kind of people her brothers were. Introducing them to the workshop was to cause trouble for Gu Yundong. Because of this, Madame Dong's brothers scolded her for being a heartless ingrate. Now that she was rich, she forgot about her brothers and only thought about living a good life. She would be struck by lightning in the future. Then, Jianghu, who was already agile, chased them out with a stick. The Zhang family's life was indeed getting better and better. Jianghu and his wife were working in Gu Yundong's workshop. They did not have much land to begin with and had already rented it out. The couple worked hard and increased their wages. Zhang Jia had already gone to the private school in the neighboring village to study. According to Zhang Hu, he would send Zhang Lu over in 2 years. The private school did not have a high tuition fee. Although it was a little strenuous to provide for the 2 children, the Zhang family's life was getting better and better. It did not matter if it was a little tough. Zhang Yu was a girl and could not go to school. She helped out at home. However, Zhang Jia would teach her how to read every day when he returned from the private school. Zhang Yu was also hardworking and often came to the Gu family to ask Xianxia about embroidery. At the mention of Xianxia, Gu Yundong could not help but ask, "Where did she go? I haven't seen her since I came back." If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 726. Affection is gone. An unnatural look flashed across Tong An's face. Gu Yundong did not notice and continued to walk forward. Only then did Tong An take a few steps forward and say, "She went to the county city today to sell her embroidery work." "Really? How's her embroidery sales these days?" Tong An quickly lowered his head and said softly, "Well, I'm not too sure." Gu Yundong nodded and did not ask further. After all, there were differences between men and women. It was indeed inappropriate for Tong An to ask too much about Shen Sishan's private matters. She changed her mind and asked about other things. Tong An exhaled slightly before continuing. The Zhang family was getting better and better now. It was said that they would renovate the house next year and plan to build 2 more rooms. At that time, they would give each of the children a room. Compared to the Zhang family, the Shi family had changed even more.
Not only did the Shi couple manage the orchard for Gu Yundong, but they also earned a lot of money. Coupled with Zhuangzi, who was now the shopkeeper, the changes in the Shi family were visible to the naked eye. During this period of time, the Shi family had already been renovating the house. In addition, Lan Huar and Jiang Bao had just gotten engaged and were about to get married next year. However, Lan Huar did not have a proper boudoir of her own. The Shi couple wanted her to get married in a grand manner, so the first thing they renovated was Lan Huar's boudoir. Now that Lan Huar matter was settled, Zhuangzi was still alone. The Shi couple was very anxious. Their neighbors and friends stared at Zhuangzi as if he was fat meat. They wished they could tie him up and make him their son-in-law. This was a shopkeeper. He had become the head shopkeeper of a county shop at such a young age. He was too promising. Moreover, the Shi couple had a good personality and were not domineering. His sister-in-law was about to get married and they were even renovating the old house. Which woman would not enjoy life after marrying him? However, Zhuangzi was unwilling no matter what. He simply did not come back after his family said too much. During the past 10 days, he had been living in the county shop for half of the time. If there was anything, he would ask Chen Jinkai to help pass on a message. Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry when she heard that. This was a career-type man, completely devoted to work. Speaking of Chen Jinkai, Tongan suddenly thought of something. Madame Fong even returned to Yongfu village and ran to the village chief's house to cause a scene. It could be said that she ruined her last relationship with the Chen family. What did she do? She said that Jiang Yongkong was not nice to her and scolded her every day. She asked the village chief to help divorce him. However, the village chief is in an awkward position right now. He's neither from Madame Fang's maternal family nor from her husband's family. Madame Fang is no longer a member of Yongfu village either. He couldn't care less about her, so he asked her to talk to her maternal family. Seeing that he was unwilling to help, Madame Fang cursed him for his lack of conscience and kept slandering him. In the end, Madame Zhou couldn't take it anymore and went up to slap Madame Fang twice. The two of them started fighting. Later on, for some reason, Madame Fang accidentally bumped into Chen Jinkai's 12-year-old son. His son's head hit the doorframe on the spot, scaring the entire family. Fortunately, the doctor said that it was nothing serious. Only then did the Chen family heave a sigh of relief. However, they had completely drawn a line with Madame Fang and would pretend not to know this person from now on. When Gu Yundong heard this, she sighed with emotion. The Fang family was really walking further and further down the path of courting death. As they spoke, the two of them had already arrived at the entrance of the Gu family's workshop. When she saw Gu Yundong enter, everyone in the workshop greeted her. They looked very happy. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 727. Giving red packets. Increasing pay. Gu Yundong looked around and realized that although everyone was in good spirits, their bodies were indeed quite tired. She knew that everyone had been working hard recently. In order to keeping the supply in the shop, no one had rested. Gu Yundong was very touched by how much everyone had sacrificed for the workshop. Especially when she saw the inventory in the storeroom at the back, she was even more moved. Hence, after coming out, she said to everyone, "It's been hard on everyone during this period of time. In a few days, when new long-term workers are hired, everyone will be able to relax a little. To thank everyone for your hard work these days, I'll give everyone a red packet tomorrow to celebrate. Everyone, please don't find it small." Ah! The long-term workers in the workshop immediately cheered. Even the fatigue on their bodies was swept away. "Boss, we don't mind if it's not too little. 1 copper coin is fine. Boss, it's not hard on us. We're so happy to be able to work in the workshop." "That's right, boss. The food in this workshop is very good. I don't even want to go home." "Boss, don't worry. We definitely won't let the supply in the shop break. Even if you open another shop, we can still provide it." That's right. The boss business is doing well." Everyone chimed in one after another, making it lively and willing. Gu Yundong felt a surge of warmth in her heart. These people always used the simplest language to express their sincerest feelings. They were really very cute. The smile on Gu Yundong's face widened. "Thank you, everyone. You're all so capable.
It would be unreasonable not to increase your salary. Whoosh. The excited voice was even louder than before. Compared to red packets, the increase in salary was naturally more exciting. Someone even shouted, "We can work for another 100 years." Gu Yundong staggered and almost lost her balance. She smiled at the person who spoke and shook her head before leaving. She had indeed gone back to prepare red packets and increase their salary. Actually, there had been an increase in wages before. Now, most of the people in the workshop earned 800 copper coins a month. The junior managers already had 1 tael of silver. The Zeng couple each had 1 tael of silver each. This time, the salary was raised to 1 tael for everyone else, and 2 taels for the junior managers. It could be considered an increase of 200 copper coins each. There were also red packets. 500 copper coins per person to buy delicious food for everyone. Gu Yundong asked Tong'en to prepare the money. She did not wait until the next day and distributed them that night. Not long after Tong'en left, Xianxia returned. She did not look too good. When she saw Gu Yundong at home, she was stunned for a moment. Then, she quickly smiled. "You're back? I heard that the shops in the prefectural city are very busy and lively, right? How are Aunt Yang and Kiki? Where's Aunt Ku?" Gu Yundong sighed and pulled her to the side to sit down. "You look much more haggard than before I left. What happened? Do you want to tell me?" Xianxia lowered her head and suddenly smiled bitterly. "Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that you suddenly went to the prefectural city. This house suddenly became much quieter, so I'm not used to it." Gu Yundong did not believe her. "We're friends. Between friends, no matter if we're happy or unhappy, we can talk to each other. Sitian, you can try telling me and I'll give you ideas. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 728. Difficulties. Xianxia raised her head and looked at her serious expression. She actually felt like she wanted to rely on her. She was clearly older than Gu Yundong, but it didn't seem to be of much use. She lowered her head slightly and thought for a moment before saying in a low voice, "I've indeed encountered some difficulties recently." As she spoke, Xianxia took out a set of embroidery from her bag. "I spent more than 2 months embroidering this. I thought I could sell it for a good price, but who knew? It was fine if the price was lowered again and again. At most, she would not sell this set. However, who knew that the cloth shop owners in the county city had communicated with each other and she could not sell her other embroidery work? Since that was the case, she went to town. However, the cloth shops in town were not very big. They wouldn't purchase her embroidery work and could only take on small things like handkerchiefs. If this continued, when would she be able to earn enough money to live alone outside? She couldn't possibly stay in the Gu family forever, right? Gu Yundong frowned. If she remembered correctly, most of the cloth shops in the county were run by the Peng family, right? To be able to unite several shops, it was most likely the shopkeeper of the Peng family. Peng Zhongfei was a scumbag himself, and his subordinates were not good people either. Gu Yundong could look for Peng Zhongfei, but she did not want to have anything to do with the Peng family. It was the same for Peng Zhongfei. After all, nothing good happened every time he saw her. Gu Yundong opened Xianxia's embroidery and her eyes lit up. She was stunned. Such beautiful embroidery. Surely, it can be sold for a good price. Xianxia thought so too. This was her hard work, but unfortunately, Gu Yundong looked at it again and again. He smiled and said, "Since the people in the county city don't know what's good for them, take them to the prefectural city." The prefectural city? Of course, if you don't go to the prefectural city, I can help you sell it. Gu Yundong said, "Anyway, I have a shop in the prefectural city now, so I have to go back and forth often. Even if I'm not free, Tong Ping and the others have to deliver goods to the shop from time to time. You can ask him to help bring your works over. With your skills, you don't have to worry about not being able to sell them." Xianxia moved but said, "Will it be too much trouble for you?" "What trouble is there? It's just a matter of convenience. If you're afraid of trouble, just don't refuse when I ask you for help later." "Of course I won't refuse," Xianxia quickly said. "Isn't that enough? Sitian, I think you should embroider such big pieces in the future.
They can be sold for a lot of money. They're much better than the ones you embroidered, such as pouches and handkerchiefs. Xianxia thought so too, but she had just arrived at Yongfu village and was not confident. This embroidery was the first big piece she had tried. Unfortunately, she had hit a wall everywhere and was very discouraged. Yundong was already pondering which shop she should sell the embroidery to. During her time in the prefectural city, she had also visited a few shops. Just as she was thinking, Tongan returned. When he saw Xianxia sitting in the central room, he was slightly stunned and immediately lowered his head. When Xianxia saw him, she hurriedly stood up and said unnaturally, "Yundong, I'll go back to my room first. You have something to discuss first, right?" With that, she left in a hurry. When Yundong looked up, she could only see her back. She frowned slightly. Why did she feel that Sitian was still hiding something from her? However, there were always secrets. Since she was unwilling to tell, Yundong could not force her. Yundong put away the embroidery work and looked at Tongan. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 729. Supporting elder sister in the future. Tongan had already sent out the red packets and also mentioned the increase in salary. Everyone was very happy, and Yundong was relieved. After a while, Yunxu and Yuanji returned from school. When the two little guys heard that she was at home, they rushed in like a gust of wind without even putting down their school bags. Big sister, you're back. Cousin, how are uncle and the others?" The two of them ran to her in an instant, then stopped in unison to avoid bumping into her. Yundong squatted down and hugged each of them. "Did you miss big sister?" "Yes." The two of them nodded obediently, their eyes sparkling. Yundong wiped their sweat with a handkerchief. Then, she stood up and held their sweaty hands as they walked into the house. "Big sister bought gifts for you in the prefectural city. Come and take a look." Yunxu immediately jumped up in joy. When he saw Yundong's gift, his eyes lit up. Big sister is really the best big sister in history. She's already so beautiful and kind-hearted. It's hard to earn money by opening a shop in the prefectural city, but she still wants to buy gifts for us. Cousin Yuanji, we must be filial to big sister in the future and support her in her old age. Yuanji nodded. Yundong. Support me in my old age? When I'm old, you won't be young anymore. Can you put away your filial piety? Why did she feel that after not seeing this little guy for a while, he was becoming more and more eloquent and even knew how to flatter others? What did Qin Wenjing teach him? Yundong's gifts were all trinkets from the prefectural city. She had thought of buying them pen, ink, paper and inkstone, but decided against it. Studying was already so tiring, so they had to relax appropriately. Those toys were quite good for entertainment and relaxation. After the two of them put down their school bags and became less excited, Yundong started chatting with them about the recent situation. The two little fellows seemed to be very interested in how Dajiang entered Tianhai Academy. So Yundong told them the entire process as if she was telling a story. The two of them were especially fascinated as they listened. Yunxu sighed and said, "My father is really too smart. Cousin Yuanji, what if the two of us want to go to Tianhai Academy in the future and the mountain elder makes things difficult for us? Moreover, if he learns from my father's lesson, the difficulty of the questions will definitely be even greater. Maybe they'll ask you who you should save when your big sister, uncle, aunt, and Kiki fall into the water." Yunxu nodded heavily. Looks like he'll have to think about this from now on. After some thought, he shook his head. "No, I should start learning how to swim from now on. When the time comes, I can tell the mountain elder that I will save all four of them." Yundong was speechless. Can you guys be more realistic? Does the mountain elder have nothing better to do? Does he have to rack his brains to think of 3 difficult questions for every student who enters the school? Won't his head go bald? However, Yunxu felt that what he was thinking about now was very realistic. This was called taking precautions before anything happened. He had to consider all the possibilities. What if the mountain elder wanted to make things difficult for him even at the risk of going bald? After all, the man did not gain any advantage from his father, and might want to make things difficult for the son. Yundong actually felt that what he said made sense. Chapter 730. A carriage came to Yongfu village. Forget it. Let's not care about him. Gu Yundong shook her head and saw Shao Qingyuan enter. He was here for dinner. Speaking of dinner, Gu Yundong suddenly thought of something. Gu Yundong called Yunshu and Yuanji, who were thinking about the problem. I heard that you've been going to the kitchen for the past 2 days to make your own food? Yunshu admitted it readily. Yes. Why did you go to the kitchen for no reason? Kiki's birthday is at the end of the month. Kiki likes to eat, so I thought that I would make something delicious for her. He was the older brother. Last time, he had an unforgettable birthday. It was Kiki's turn. He also wanted to give his sister a surprise birthday gift. Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment before he laughed. That's a good idea, but you're still young. You have to be careful. When you're in the kitchen, you have to be watched by the adults. She didn't object to the children entering the kitchen. Not to mention Yunshu, even Kiki had to do what she could. However, the prerequisite was that there were adults present. Otherwise, if there was danger, others would be caught off guard. Yunshu nodded vigorously. I know. I cherish myself very much. All right, elder sister. What birthday gift did you prepare for Kiki? You have to inform me first so that we won't give her the same gifts. It won't be heavy. Gu Yundong rubbed his little head and led him to the dining room for dinner. Big sister knows how to make a lot of things. I'll just cook something else. Gu Yong's birthday was at the end of this month, and Gu Yundong's birthday was next month. The two sisters were very close. Madame Yang's birthday was at the end of the year. Only Gu Dajiang's was in the first half of the family. Gu Yundong had already thought of Kiki's gift. The three of them walked to the dining room. Shao Qingyuan had already taken out the big black basket in the corner. Yunshu and Yuanji were stunned when they saw Big Black. Big dog? Sister, why do we have a big dog? This is Big Black. Gu Yundong told them about Big Black. The way they looked at Big Black instantly changed. Big Black is a hero. We will definitely treat Big Black well in the future. Be good and eat first. With Gu Yundong around, the two little guys and Shao Qingyuan had a huge appetite. They only stopped after eating 2 big bowls. The next day was the day that Gu Yundong finally decided on the long-term workers. This time, she prepared to recruit 50 people. This way, the workshop would have 100 long-term workers. The workshop was also big enough to accommodate 100 people. There were still many applicants, even more than the last time. After all, there was a long time between the recruitments this time. Everyone in the surrounding villages knew how good the benefits of the Gu family workshop were. Especially those who had relatives and friends from Yongfu village. They spread the news one by one and were very popular. However, Tongan had already selected 80 people beforehand. Gu Yundong only needed to choose 50 people from these 80 people. Half a day was enough. Gu Yundong quickly decided on the candidates. This time, there were many villagers who were far away. Fortunately, the workshop had already prepared accommodations for those who could not go home. After the recruitment was completed, the long-term workers went back to prepare. They came to work the next day. As soon as they arrived, the pressure on the workshop instantly decreased a lot. Tong Ping and the others no longer had their hands tied when transporting goods to the prefectural city, and they even collected carts of fruits. After finishing her work at the workshop, Gu Yundong was about to go to the county city to see Qin Wanjing when a carriage suddenly came from Yongfu village. The carriage stopped in front of Shao Qingyuan's courtyard door, and a noble young master got out. Chapter 731. Shao Qingyuan, you have no principles. Gu Yundong stood at the door and waited for Tong Shui Tao to come over with the carriage. Hence, she immediately saw that person and immediately watched in surprise as he walked into Shao Qingyuan's courtyard. Xianxia, who was standing beside her, frowned slightly. Who is this? He even brought 2 guards with him. Don't tell me he's here to cause trouble for young Master Shao? Gu Yundong shook his head. No. She thought for a moment and said to Xianxia, tell Shui Tao that we won't be going to the county for the time being. I'll go to the Shao family's house to take a look. Xianxia nodded and Gu Yundong strode towards the Shao family. The 2 guards guarding the Shao family's door immediately stopped her. Gu Yundong rolled his eyes. Your young master is a guest at someone else's house, and you want to stop the master? The 2 guards looked at each other. You're the master? Gu Yundong nodded. Just as she was about to shout, she saw a Mao run out.
Miss, come in quickly. Gu Yundong glared at the two guards and went in. As she walked in, she asked Mao, "Why is young Master Dai looking for Brother Shao?" He said that he's here as a guest. He even planned to hunt in the mountains with young Master. Hunting? Were all the young masters of the prefecture magistrate's family so free? They came all the way from the prefectural city to Yongfu village just to hunt in the mountains with Shao Qingyuan? Did she hear wrongly? As they spoke, the two of them stood outside the central room and heard faint voices coming from inside. Perhaps hearing the footsteps outside, there was no sound from inside. Then, Shao Qingyuan walked out. "Why are you here? Didn't you say you were going to the county?" "I saw that young Master Dai was here, so I came over out of curiosity." Dai Wenhuo naturally knew her. When he heard this, he smiled. "Miss Gu, how have you been? My mother has been talking about it every day these past few days, hoping that Miss Gu will return to the prefectural city as soon as possible. I came here today without telling her. Otherwise, my mother might have come to look for Miss Gu." "Young Master Dai, you must be joking. I heard that you're looking for Big Brother Shao to enter the deep mountains." "That's right," Dai Wenhuo replied. "Previously, I heard from young Master Liu that Shao Qingyuan often enters the mountains. Not only can he fight tigers, but entering the mountains is like entering the back orchard to him. Therefore, I wanted to ask him to enter the mountains to take a look. Miss Gu wouldn't refuse, right?" Gu Yundong touched her chin. "Deep into the mountains?" David's last sentence was just a joke. Unexpectedly, she suddenly fell silent as if she was really thinking. Dai Wenhuo's mouth tightened. "You're not really refusing, are you?" Gu Yundong looked up and suddenly smiled. "Why wouldn't I let you go deep into the mountains? But I'll go with you." David was speechless. Shao Qingyuan frowned. "You want to go?" "Yeah." Shao Qingyuan frowned even more, clearly not agreeing. Dai Wenhuo said, "Miss Gu, this isn't too good, right? This time, we won't be able to come out in 5 to 6 days. It's especially tiring. You're a delicate lady. Not only will it be dangerous, but you'll also suffer a lot. Most importantly, she would be a burden." They were not going on an outing. Gu Yundong looked at Shao Qingyuan with a smile. The latter surrendered in a second and exhaled slightly. "All right, let's go together." Dai Wenhuo jerked his head around to stare at him in astonishment. "You agree just like that? Aren't you being too unprincipled?" Dai Wenhuo's expression turned a little ugly. He wanted to say something, but Shao Qingyuan said, "Well, set off at 5 tomorrow morning." Chapter 732. Gu Yundong's mounting bag. Gu Yundong immediately nodded. "Then I'll go back and prepare. I'll look for you tomorrow." After saying that, she hurriedly ran back to the Gu family. She was really preparing herself. She had entered the mountains before. The last time she encountered a wild boar, she was already at the edge of the mountains. However, this time, Dai Wenhuo said that they would be gone for at least 5 to 6 days, so they had to walk inside even more. Therefore, she had prepared a lot of things. She had a spatial storage, so it wouldn't be a problem for her to bring a mobile RV over. Unfortunately, she had to restrain herself in front of so many people. She couldn't exaggerate. Therefore, she planned to make a hiking bag. Most of her things would be placed in her space. The hiking bag would be used as a cover. However, Gu Yundong's skills were limited, so she found a cloth from the room and asked Xianxia to stitch it up. She gestured the look of a hiking bag. Xianxia was an expert in this area, so she quickly got to work. Gu Yundong thought that she had to have a tent to live in the wild. Otherwise, it would be inconvenient to sleep at night. There were a few modern tents in her spatial storage, but they could not be used. After some thought, she took out the oilcloth and asked Madame Jiang to help sew a simple tent. Madame Jiang was pregnant now, and Gu Yundong did not allow her to do heavy and dirty work. However, it was not a problem to do some embroidery work. When the bags and tents were ready, Gu Yundong began to prepare some food and necessities. Food was not a problem. They would not be short of food when they went hunting in the mountains. She needed a water bag. The water in the mountain was very clear, so it would not be lacking. She had to prepare a lighter and an umbrella. She could not lack medicine for external and internal injuries. Shao Qingyuan would definitely prepare it. Gu Yundong only had to prepare it in his spatial storage. There were also clothes, hats, and gloves. Now that the weather was gradually cooling, it would definitely be colder in the mountains. Should she bring the cutlery? Gu Yundong looked at the things she needed to bring now and decisively brought a small milk pot that someone had made for her some time ago, as well as a few pairs of chopsticks and spoons. This made it seem like they were really going on an outing. Hopefully, Wenhuo wouldn't say anything. If he was dissatisfied, she would not share these things with him. He would suffer. However, her guess was right. Wenhuo was indeed very unhappy. After Gu Yundong left, he walked up to Shao Qingyuan and asked, "Are you really planning to bring her into the mountains? She's a woman and she's delicate. I'm afraid she'll complain that she's tired before we even enter the mountains. Are we going to send her back then?" Shao Qingyuan glanced at her. Yundong is not an ordinary woman. This situation won't happen. Of course I know that she's not an ordinary woman. Otherwise, she wouldn't have opened such a big shop and made his parents trust her so much. But no matter how extraordinary she is, she's still a woman. There are many snakes, insects, rats, and ants in the mountains. She must be afraid, right? She's not afraid. Shao Qingyuan frowned. Yundong is skilled. Wenhuo could tell that in this person's eyes, his fiancée was a good person and would not have any problems. He felt that if he continued, Shao Qingyuan would probably be angry. But he still felt that he should not bring Gu Yundong along, so after thinking about it, he simply changed his words. "All right, I know that Miss Gu is very awesome. It's not a problem for her to enter the deep mountains. But have you thought about it? There are 2 of us men, plus my 2 guards. There are 4 men and 1 woman. Isn't there a lot of inconveniences?" Shao Qingyuan felt that it did make sense. Chapter 733. This is different from what we agreed. Wenhuo saw that his expression had softened and continued. "Furthermore, we'll be gone for a few days this time. Miss Gu is very busy with her shop. This is delaying her matters, right? Also, although you and Miss Gu are engaged, you're not married after all. If her parents know that you brought her into the mountains, will they be angry and think that you're unreliable? What if there's a change in the marriage?" Shao Qingyuan frowned even more. Wenhuo was very good at talking. Every word hit the nail on the head. After a long silence, Shao Qingyuan finally nodded. "I'll persuade her not to go." Wenhuo heaved a huge sigh of relief. He had finally been persuaded. It was not in vain that he had tried so hard to persuade him. However, when Shao Qingyuan went to the Gu residence, he was told that Gu Yundong had gone to the county city. He thought that perhaps she was going to Gus to give some instructions, so he would wait for her to come back. Shao Qingyuan also had to prepare some things he needed to enter the mountain. However, he waited until the next morning when they were about to set off. It was not even 5 o'clock when Gu Yundong arrived at the Shao residence with a huge hiking bag and a thin and strange walking stick. Gu Yundong wanted to get Shao Qingyuan a hiking bag, but time was limited. She was already in a hurry to make one, so she could only give up. The moment she entered the Shao family, she saw Shao Qingyuan tying a bag. Shao Qingyuan also saw her. She was wearing men's clothes and her hair was tied into a ponytail. The cuffs on her arms and ankles were tightly tied. She looked clean and valiant. Shao Qingyuan couldn't move his eyes away. Gu Yundong walked forward and placed the huge hiking bag on the table. She said, "Look, I prepared this. I asked Sitian to sew it for me yesterday. The spatial storage inside is huge and can hold a lot of things. See if I have everything. Do you need me to bring anything else?" She seemed to be looking forward to it. "Don't bring what I have. It's tiring to carry the same stuff." Wenhuo, who was leaning against the door not far away, was stunned when he saw the huge backpack. Did this girl really think that they were going on an outing? With such a bag, she would probably not be able to carry it before she reached the foot of the mountain, right? He reckoned that she would have to let Shao Qingyuan carry this bag. Suddenly, he felt that Miss Gu was such a worrisome woman. Fortunately, he had already persuaded Shao Qingyuan yesterday not to let her follow. Wenhuo waited for Shao Qingyuan to refuse, but he did not expect that after seeing Gu Yundong's excited expression and the carefully prepared backpack, Shao Qingyuan would immediately nod and say, "It's very complete. This bag is so big. Let me carry it." David? Did he hear wrongly? What did Shao Qingyuan say just now? Did he really speak? Wenhuo took a deep breath and felt a pain in his heart.
So Qingyuan was such an unreliable person? The two people who were talking in the central room acted as if they did not see him at all and continued talking. No need. This backpack looks big, but it's actually very light. Do you see this strap? It's several layers, which can reduce the pressure. It's very easy. Why don't you give it a try? As she spoke, she closed the backpack, but her hand was still inside. She put some important things into her space and put the strap on Qingyuan's shoulder. It's very light, right? Qingyuan was surprised. It really didn't weigh much. It felt as light as a layer of skin. Chapter 734. Morning Temper Gu Yundong took the backpack down. Why don't you carry this? I'll bring you a bag. Why don't you carry the bag and I'll carry the backpack? Qingyuan was helpless. His bag was much heavier than her bag, which looked especially heavy and full. Naturally, he wouldn't switch with her. Only then was Gu Yundong satisfied. She carried her bag and turned to look at the constipated Wenhuo. Young Master Dai, do you have any more problems? Wenhuo looked at Qingyuan and chuckled. He gritted his teeth and said, No problem. Then he turned around and led the two guards away. Gu Yundong looked at his back suspiciously and turned to ask Qingyuan, What's wrong with him? Maybe he woke up too early today, he replied without changing his expression. Gu Yundong was enlightened. So this guy had a morning temper? Shaking her head, Gu Yundong carried her backpack and left with Qingyuan. The group quickly arrived at the foot of the mountain. It was still early, and the dew was very heavy. However, there were already many villagers working in the fields not far away. They did not say anything when they saw Qingyuan and the others enter the mountain. Gu Yundong was dressed in men's clothes. They could not see who she was from afar. After they entered the mountain and there was no one around, Qingyuan reached out and held Gu Yundong's hand as they walked forward. Wenhuo, who was following behind, snorted coldly. He had said that bringing a woman was a burden. Unexpectedly, even though Brother Shao looked smart and bold, he could not overcome the challenge of beauties and allowed his fiancée to fool around. No one spoke along the way. Gu Yundong was holding Qingyuan's hand with one hand and leaning on her walking stick with the other. There was nothing much in the backpack on her back, but she walked easily. After half a day, the few of them had already entered the deep mountains. The weather gradually became hot, and the road became much more difficult to walk. Wenhuo looked at Gu Yundong, who was still walking casually, and could not help but be surprised. He did not expect her to remain silent until now. She did not even drink any water. On the other hand, although he had a strong physique and good skills, he did not have many chances to enter the mountain. At most, he would accompany his grandmother and mother to the temple on the outskirts of the city, where he had to climb the mountain, occasionally. However, there were steps on the mountain. Compared to the steep mountain path that was overgrown with grass, it was worlds apart. Although Wenhuo did not feel tired, it was indeed a little strenuous to walk. Moreover, he did not have any baggage on him. He was the young master, so he naturally had the two guards carrying his things. At noon, Qingyuan saw a slightly flat spot near the pool and finally said, Let's rest and eat before moving on. Wenhuo agreed, and the others naturally had no objections. Qingyuan placed the bag on his back on the ground and found a rock for Gu Yundong to sit on. I'll go hunt 2 pheasants. Wait for me here. Okay. Wenhuo quickly said, Let Dai Yi and Dai Zhong go. His 2 guards immediately stood up, but Qingyuan said, No need. I'm familiar with this place. I'll be back soon. With that, he carried his bow and arrow and ran out agilely. Wenhuo still gave Dai Yi a look, and the latter quickly followed. Gu Yundong looked at him with a faint smile. After half a day, she could tell that Wenhuo had a problem with her following them into the mountains. However, it didn't matter. She squatted down and opened her backpack. Then, she took out the small milk pot and washed it in the water. David was speechless. Chapter 735. Sharp Contrast Pot? She actually brought a pot? Did she really think that she was here for an outing? Wenhuo could not understand what was going on in this woman's mind. However, Gu Yundong had already started to look for rocks to build a small stove. Wenhuo frowned. At the same time, the other guard, Dai Zhong, felt that it was not good to let a girl do things, so he whispered, Young master, I'll go nearby to pick up some firewood.
Okay, go ahead.
Dai Zhong did not walk far either. He was within sight and could come over if anything happened. After Dai Zhong left, Dai Wenhuo finally could not take it anymore and walked towards Gu Yundong. His tone was still rather gentle. Miss Gu, it's not good to go hunting in the mountains with a pot, right?
How can it not be good? It's convenient to cook.
As she spoke, she took out a seasoning bottle from her backpack. Dai Wenhuo's mouth twitched. We went into the mountains to hunt. We're not that particular about food.
You can't say that.
Although we're on the mountain and there are limited conditions in all aspects, we have to give ourselves the best treatment we can, right?
It won't delay things even if we bring the pot. We can eat some vegetables and rice occasionally after we eat too much roasted meat. This time, we'll be on the mountain for a few days.
When Dai Wenhuo heard about the rice, he wondered if she had brought the rice with her.
Sure enough, Gu Yundong took out a small bag of rice.
It was not much, but she could still eat a few meals with some water and porridge. Dai Wenhuo was suddenly at a loss for words.
He felt a little irritated.
You sure know how to enjoy yourself. So young Master Dai came to the mountains to suffer?
Gu Yundong was surprised. In that case, I'll put less rice.
Coincidentally, this pot isn't very big.
It was enough for her and Shao Qingyuan to eat.
She was indeed as good as her word. Dai Wenhuo almost fell back in anger.
Forget it.
He did not want to waste any more time. He returned to the rock he was sitting on and took 2 sips of water from the water bag. He did not want to talk to Gu Yundong anymore. Not long after, Dai Zhong found a lot of dry firewood.
Gu Yundong didn't use the firewood.
She found a few large pieces of dry wood, lit a fire at the bottom, and covered it with a lid.
She let the small milk pot boil.
Then, she found 2 wild vegetables beside her. After washing them, she placed them on the oilcloth and cut them into pieces. When Shao Qingyuan and Dai Yi returned with 2 pheasants each, Gu Yundong had already prepared everything. There was even a fragrance coming out of the milk pot.
Shao Qingyuan was a little surprised.
You're cooking porridge? He hadn't looked carefully before and didn't notice that she had brought rice. Gu Yundong looked at the pheasants in his hand. Yes, they were very fat and tender. She wanted to take them, but Shao Qingyuan didn't let her.
I'll handle it.
Although he did not know how to cook, it was not a problem for him to deal with wild chickens and rabbits. He could light a fire and roast them to make do.
Gu Yundong did not move.
Shao Qingyuan and Dai Zhong took the pheasants to the river to kill them. After a while, they cut open the pheasants and skewered them to roast. Dai Wenhuo only let out a sigh of relief when he smelled the roasted chicken. He quickly sprinkled the seasoning on it. His 2 guards took out a few pancakes from their bags. They were made by the old woman from the Shao family before they went out this morning. There were a lot. The pancakes were dry and could last for 2 days. Except, Dai Wenhuo watched as Gu Yundong took out 2 small wooden bowls and filled them with hot vegetable porridge. She ate with relish and he held 2 pancakes in silence. Chapter 736. He misjudged him. If he didn't compete, he wouldn't have known. But why did he feel so miserable? Young master, this pancake will soften after being warmed up. The 2 guards had been by his side for many years, so they could more or less tell that he did not have an appetite. Dai Wenhuo glared at the guard and stopped look-overing.
He lowered his head and took a bite.
He wanted to see how far Gu Yundong could carry that pot. Shao Qingyuan also glanced at Dai Wenhuo and asked Gu Yundong in a low voice, "What's wrong?
Did he bully you?"
"No, I just don't like him." "Who asked him to not let me follow you into the mountains?
He looks like I'm here to drag him down."
Gu Yundong sneered.
"Hurry up and eat.
You're not allowed to share the food with him."
Okay.
Shao Qingyuan glanced at him and thought for a moment. He felt that it was too comfortable to eat in front of him. Therefore, he held the small wooden bowl and silently turned around with his back facing him.
Dai Wenhuo was speechless. Beauty misled people.
This guy valued his lover over his friend. He had misjudged him. Gu Yundong almost burst out laughing. She tore off a leg from the roast chicken beside her and placed it in Shao Qingyuan's bowl.
"Eat more.
Don't starve."
Okay.
Shao Qingyuan completely forgot about Dai Wenhuo. He ate the drumstick meat given by his fiancée in peace.
The sound of him drinking porridge made Wenhuo want to hit him. The pancake in his hand became even more tasteless. Yi and Zhong looked at each other and sighed secretly. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Yundong washed the pot and bowls and put them in her bag. It did not seem troublesome at all. Qingyuan extinguished the fire until there were no more sparks. Then, he called for everyone to keep moving. The group walked deeper and deeper, and the road became more and more difficult. When the sky gradually darkened, Qingyuan found an empty place to stop and rest. Yundong did not cook porridge this time. She took out the pancake that Qingyuan had placed in the bag and roasted it. Then, she cut the remaining half of the roasted chicken into small pieces and stuffed them into the pancake. Then, she took the wild vegetables, mushrooms, and chicken bones to cook a small pot of bone soup. Yes, the chicken pancake with soup was simply delicious. It was too enjoyable. Wenhuo was speechless. Was this woman specially trying to anger him? As expected, she was very good at food. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to open a food shop. Humph. He continued to nibble on the dry pancake, but Yi was quick-witted. He imitated Yundong and stuffed chicken into the pancake. This way, it was much more delicious, but without soup, it felt boring after 2 bites. Qingyuan silently turned his head and continued to turn his back to them. After dinner, Wenhuo began to set up his tent. His tent was the kind of simple tent used for marching. It was very sturdy and durable. He wanted to see what Yundong would do at night. She was capable of cooking and had enjoyed it for the entire day, but the most difficult thing was to sleep at night, right? Wenhuo knew that Qingyuan basically spent the night on trees when he went deep into the mountains. However, the trip this time would be long, so he also prepared a tent. Still, Wenhuo had seen it last night. Qingyuan's tent was actually just a layer of cloth. It was barely able to block the wind. Wenhuo didn't say anything at that time, but he thought that it would be fine if Qingyuan stayed in his tent. But now, thinking of how he valued his lover over his friend, Wenhuo decided to forget it and let the man suffer on his own. Chapter 737. He's Liu Xiahui? Wenhuo did not say anything. When the tent was set up, he looked at the two of them coldly. Yundong put down her hiking bag and took out a bag. David frowned and looked over. It was actually oilcloth? Yundong shook it open and asked Qingyuan to help support it. Then, she took out a pile of rivets and found a rock to knock on. She acted skillfully, orderly, and quickly. Not long after, a round tent that looked like it was airtight and sturdy was set up. Yundong unbuttoned the tent and entered to take a look. Yes, it was too wet to sleep like this. Although there was a layer of oilcloth underneath and a pile of grass under the oilcloth, it was still a little cold. She did have a damp-proof pad, but unfortunately, it couldn't be used here. Until Qingyuan opened his bag and took out a piece of leather to lay on it. Yundong immediately laughed. You're so thoughtful. It's getting late. Just go in and rest. With that, he raised his tent that could not be simpler than a layer of cloth. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. He put away the tent. This tent is big enough. You can sleep in here too. Pfft. Wenhuo, who had quietly walked over to take a look at Yundong's strange tent, heard this and spat out a mouthful of water. Yundong gave him a disdainful look. Don't make a fuss. You have to do what's convenient when you're outside, understand? This was nothing convenient, right? Yundong ignored him and turned to look at Qingyuan. However, she saw that he was stunned and did not move. She could tell that he was nervous when she saw him swallowing uncomfortably. Qingyuan thought about it very much. He felt that he should stay in the same tent as Yundong. But, in the end, he still had to consider her reputation. There were not only the two of them here, but also Wenhuo, a young master who had been influenced by rules and etiquette since he was young. So he still shook his head, but Yundong said, I only feel safe when you live there. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep at night. Qingyuan immediately nodded. Okay, I'll protect you. Forget it. What rules and etiquette? If Wenhuo dared to go out and spout nonsense, he would kill him. Wenhuo felt the death threat that Qingyuan threw over and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. They could not be friends anymore. After leaving the mountains, it was better not to interact with each other.
He did not have such friends. Shao Qingyuan put away his pile of rags and went straight into Gu Yundong's tent. However, the moment he entered, there were only the two of them left in the small space. His nose was filled with her scent, and Shao Qingyuan's body stiffened uncontrollably. Gu Yundong became nervous when she saw him buttoning up the tent. Damn it, she had overestimated herself. Now, the blood in her body began to gurgle and surge. Her hands and feet were stiff. It was Shao Qingyuan. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief and said, "It's getting late. You should sleep."
Okay.
Gu Yundong slowly lay down. With his back facing Shao Qingyuan, his breathing became lighter. It was terrifyingly quiet in the tent. Wenhuo leaned over, but she did not hear a single sound. Could it be that his brother is Liu Xiahui? What nonsense are you thinking? Wenhuo went into his tent. Zhong was on night watch today. He went straight up the tree and quietly watched the movements below. Chapter 738. Tacit Understanding. The night passed uneventfully. When Gu Yundong woke up, he saw Shao Qingyuan sleeping a meter away from him. His entire body was well behaved. His eyes were closed and his breathing was calm. It was not the first time Gu Yundong had seen him sleeping, but now that he was lying not far from her, she had a very different feeling. The first thing she saw when she woke up was him. She could be in a good mood for the entire day. Gu Yundong could not help but smile as she slowly sat up. However, no matter how gently she moved, Shao Qingyuan still opened his eyes instantly. There was a moment of confusion in his eyes, but he quickly regained his senses. "You're awake." He had just woken up and his voice was a little hoarse. However, Shao Qingyuan looked at her with a burning gaze. He subconsciously reached out and pulled her into his arms. He had wanted to do so last night, but he was afraid that he could not control his impulses so late at night.
Now.
Shao Qingyuan suddenly coughed lightly and immediately let go of her. "Wait here for a while. I'll get water for you to wash up." With that, he turned around and left the tent, looking a little disheveled. Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment before she suddenly laughed out loud. Did he not know that it was easy to be impulsive in the morning? She stretched her back and packed her things. After tidying up, the few of them set off again. However, although they said that they were going into the mountains to hunt, in fact, everyone was distracted. Shao Qingyuan didn't care much about the prey. Before he came out, he had brought a small basket that was hanging on his waist. Along the way, he had been looking for precious and rare herbs. Wenhuo said that he was here to kill big guys, so he pretended not to see any roe deer, wild boar, deer, or sheep on the way. At most, Zhong and Yi would hunt wild chickens and hares to fill their stomachs. But Gu Yundong still noticed that Wenhuo seemed to be looking for something. What was he looking for? Gu Yundong did not ask and pretended not to know. On the third day, the group stood at a fork in the road. When Shao Qingyuan asked which way they were going, Wenhuo asked him, "Have you explored both roads?" Shao Qingyuan shook his head. "I've been to the left, but I've never explored the right." Wenhuo said, "Then take the right." He smiled. There might be something good. Shao Qingyuan had no objections. He had been to the left side before, and there were not many medicinal herbs. This time, he could check the right. Perhaps he could find Bai Musi? The group walked to the right for another day. Perhaps because it had been a long time, Wenhuo became a little anxious. However, Gu Yundong felt that he might have eaten too much meat and was getting fired up. Forget it. For the sake of his mother, Gu Yundong still gave him a portion of porridge when she cooked again. Otherwise, what if he went back another day to complain? She would be so embarrassed about Madame Dai. However, at night, she told Shao Qingyuan about Wenhuo. "He must have something to do in the mountains and asked you to lead the way."
Yes, I know.
Shao Qingyuan nodded. "But since he didn't say, there's no need for us to ask. We're just leading the way. Everyone has a tacit understanding." He had already seen it. Someone who really wanted to go hunting in the mountains should not have such a reaction. After a pause, Shao Qingyuan continued, "Do you still remember that Qin Wenjing was looking for me?" Gu Yundong was stunned. Why was it related to Qin Wenjing again? She frowned and thought for a moment. A moment later, she suddenly remembered. "You mean the last time he asked you to talk alone?" Chapter 739. Pretend not to know. Shao Qingyuan nodded. Qin Wenjing asked me about some things in the mountains. This time, Dai Wenhuo asked me to bring him into the mountains. Perhaps there's something in the mountains we don't know. Gu Yundong gritted his teeth. Qin Wenjing is in cahoots with Dai Wenhuo. This goddamn guy promised not to drag us into his mess. As expected, he didn't do it. I guess there's no other way. Shao Qingyuan felt that no matter if it was Qin Wenjing or Dai Wenhuo, they were doing their best to not let them get involved in these matters. But there were some things that could not be avoided. Gu Yundong snorted and did not say anything. Qin Wenjing and Dai Wenhuo were both the emperor's men. What they wanted to do was naturally what the current emperor wanted to do. Gu Yundong thought that the emperor was a wise ruler and had done her favors. If she could help without implicating herself, she would help. Shao Qingyuan looked at her unhappy expression and smiled. She said that she wanted to draw a line, but with her current relationship with Qin Wenjing, how could she draw a line? She treated Qin Wenjing as a friend, so she naturally wouldn't stand by and do nothing. Since he had said so, Gu Yundong continued to pretend that she did not know Dai Wenhuo's motive. The next day, they continued walking. Shao Qingyuan was familiar with the roads in the mountains. He knew that Dai Wenhuo might be looking for something, so he deliberately avoided the traces of those large beasts. On the 5th day after they entered the mountains, Shao Qingyuan discovered traces of a bear. He led his men in the opposite direction. However, since Dai Wenhuo was looking for something, he naturally paid special attention to all kinds of traces. He also saw the footprints of the bears, but at the same time, he also saw traces similar to humans entering and leaving. Delight appeared on Dai Wenhuo's face, but he did not want to implicate Shao Qingyuan, especially with Gu Yundong around. Therefore, he continued to walk forward and asked Dai Zhong to investigate. Dai Zhong used the excuse of hunting rabbits to run away. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan did not expose him, but they slowed down. Before noon, they stopped to eat. Gu Yundong no longer had any rice. She did not bring much. There was still some dried meat and some wild vegetable soup. Just as she was scooping a bowl of soup for each of them, a banging sound suddenly came from not far away. The few of them quickly stood up and picked up their weapons. Gu Yundong could only pour away the wild vegetable soup. He stuffed the hot pot into the oil bag and put it in his backpack. At the same time, she stored it in her spatial storage. Soon, the sound got closer and closer. After a while, Dai Zhong ran over in a sorry state. As he ran, he turned around and said, "Run! What happened?" "Pythons, 2 pythons are coming this way." 2. The few of them quickly packed up and prepared to leave. However, the 2 pythons moved very quickly and arrived in front of him in a short while. Moreover, they looked very agile. They instantly wrapped around a big tree at the side and swooped towards them with their mouths wide open. Gu Yundong quickly jumped up and dodged to the side. The crossbow in her hand shot out with a whoosh. At the same time, Shao Qingyuan aimed his bow at the same python. Dai Wenhuo and the other 2 dealt with the other one, but he was very surprised. At this time, the pythons should be hibernating. Even if they weren't hibernating, they shouldn't be so agile. Chapter 740. Dai Wenhuo grabs Gu Yundong and runs away. Dai Zhong pointed at the stomach of one of the pythons. It was bulging and looked like there was something inside. Dai Wenhuo suddenly remembered the traces of people passing by on the ground and immediately understood. Someone must have disturbed these 2 pythons, and they were swallowed? Dai Wenhuo frowned. How long have they been swallowed? She wondered if they could be saved. Dai Zhong shook his head. From the looks of it, it's been a few hours. There's no hope. Dai Wenhuo did not ask further and began to focus on dealing with the pythons in front of him. They were all skilled people and had sharp weapons in their hands. It was not difficult to kill the pythons. Therefore, not long after, the pythons could not defeat their encirclement and fell to the ground with a bang. The other one suddenly went crazy. Its tail wrapped around the tree and its head began to hit the other trees crazily. Gu Yundong quickly dodged to the side to prevent the branches from hitting her. Unexpectedly, just as she dodged, she bumped into Dai Wenhuo, who was walking over. Just as she was about to curse him for getting in her way, something suddenly fell in front of her. Gu Yundong's expression changed slightly and her pupils constricted. Dai Wenhuo screamed, "Run!" Then, she subconsciously grabbed Gu Yundong's wrist and ran forward.
Gu Yundong was speechless. Shao Qingyuan hurriedly chased after him. Yundong. Gu Yundong did not even have time to respond. At this critical moment, Dai Wenhuo, this lunatic, was extraordinarily fast. She did not even have the time to stop when she was dragged forward. She could only hear Shao Qingyuan's cries and buzzing. The sound was so stimulating that it made one's scalp tingle. She inadvertently glanced at her head and was shocked by the huge hornets behind her. Wasn't this too much? Hearing the buzzing sound getting closer and closer, Dai Wenhuo sped up. Gu Yundong was caught off guard and fell forward. However, before she could fall, Shao Qingyuan, who had rushed up from behind, had already picked her up and carried her on his shoulder before running forward. Gu Yundong was speechless. She lay on Shao Qingyuan's shoulder with a look of despair. In the end, she dug into her pocket and took out 2 masks. She put one on her face. Then, she turned around with great effort and put it on Shao Qingyuan. After running for an unknown period of time, the buzzing sound behind them finally became softer and softer. In the end, they could no longer hear it. Only then did they slowly exhale and stop. The situation was urgent just now, so Shao Qingyuan did not think too much about it. He only wanted to catch up to Gu Yundong as soon as possible. Only then did he realize that he should not have run like this. He squatted down to check on Gu Yundong. "Are you all right?" Gu Yundong was fine, but she felt uncomfortable from the bumps. This was a mountain road. She had already tried her best to control herself when she was carried like this on the mountain road without vomiting. Gu Yundong did not want to speak. She sat on a rock at the side and gently rubbed her stomach. She took out some preserved sour fruit and stuffed it into his mouth. Shao Qingyuan took out a water bag and fed her 2 mouthfuls. Then, he went to see Dai Wenhuo and the other 2. Dai Wenhuo was fine, but Dai Zhong, who was at the back, had been stung in 2 places. His situation was not good now. His face was swollen and painful, accompanied by dizziness. He could not stand steadily. Shao Qingyuan quickly walked over. "Let him sit down first. I'll help him squeeze the venom out first." He asked Gu Yundong for vinegar and asked Dai Yi to apply it on him. Then he said, "I'll go nearby to look for the purple flower earthding." After saying that, he stood up. However, just as he raised his head to look around, he frowned. Chapter 741. Alone they were lost. Shao Qingyuan pursed his lips. He wasn't afraid of getting lost. If he was given more time, he could still find his way. However, Dai Zhong had been stung by the hornets. He definitely could not stay in the deep mountains anymore. He had to get out as soon as possible. As Shao Qingyuan found the purple flower earthding and crushed it for Dai Zhong to ease the pain, he lowered his eyes and thought about leaving the mountain. Dai Wenhuo had no intention of continuing to search. He came over to discuss with Shao Qingyuan. He also had a map in his hand. It was about the villages around the 9 Tigers Mountain. Shao Qingyuan was more familiar with the 9 Tigers Mountain. Based on the time and route when they entered the mountain, he could roughly guess where they were now. "Let's go out of the mountain first. This way, it should be between Shaoshi village and Hashan village." Dai Wenhuo nodded. After resting for a while, he helped Dai Zhong out of the mountain. Fortunately, although Dai Wenhuo led everybody on the wrong way for a while, he was aiming out of the mountain. Therefore, when the group saw the village, the sky had just darkened. The few of them heaved a sigh of relief and quickened their pace. Just as they reached the foot of the mountain, they bumped into a young man carrying a basket on his back. The young man was stunned for a moment. "Who are you?" After staying in the mountains for so many days, especially in the end, when they almost lost their shoes to avoid the hornets, they were in a sorry state. Gu Yundong, on the other hand, was better off. Hence, she went forward and asked, "May I ask where this is? We lost our way hunting in the mountains and finally found our way." The young man's eyes widened. "You guys went deep into the mountains?" He then looked at Dai Zhong, who clearly did not look too good. "Is he injured?" "He was stung by hornets," Gu Yundong said. The young man quickly said, "Then we have to find a doctor to take a look first. If a hornet stings someone, it will kill them. This is Qingyuan village. My house is down there. Why don't you go to my house to rest first?" As he spoke, the youth tightened the basket on his back and hurriedly led the way. Qingyuan village? This didn't seem to be within the range of Shaoshi village to Hashan village. It seemed that they had deviated from the route, but fortunately, they had a place to stay after leaving the mountains. The few of them followed the youth down the mountain. Yundong chatted with him as they walked. Only then did she understand that the young man's name was Qin Shu. He was only 13 years old this year and was even younger than Yundong. Qingyuan village was very remote and extremely poor. There was a river separating it from Qinbei village on the other side. The two small villages were in the mountains, so it was not easy to get out of town. There were less than 200 people in the entire village, and the land was very barren. However, Qin Shu seemed to be very happy. He said, "There are very few outsiders in our village. It's very cold. However, you're lucky. There's a doctor in our Qingyuan village. Although he can't treat serious diseases, he can deal with hornet stings. I'll look for him later. You guys rest first." As they spoke, Qin Shu had already led them to a small courtyard. Qin Shu opened the courtyard door and put down the basket on his back. He called them in to sit. "I'll get you some water." Yundong sized up the courtyard in front of her. It was very small and dilapidated. There did not seem to be anyone in the house except for Qin Shu. There were only 2 rooms and only one set of things. Yundong and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other and quickly understood that this youth was alone. Chapter 742. Qin Shu poured some water and told him to sit for a while he went out to look for the doctor. Dai Yi followed him. Not long after, a doctor limped over. Actually, Dai Zhong was much better. Shao Qingyuan had treated him in time and used the right medicine. He was no longer dizzy, but his skin was still swollen and uncomfortable. The doctor checked and only said that it was nothing serious. He told him to rest well, then took 2 copper coins and left. Qin Shu was very happy. He let them sit down first and went to the kitchen to make dinner. Dai Yi then explained what he had seen on the way to invite the doctor. It was indeed as Qin Shu had said. This place was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and there was only one road out of the village. It was bumpy and difficult to walk. There was still a long way to go on the main road outside. No wonder there were no outsiders. This place belongs to Jianghu County. It takes nearly 6 hours to get to the nearest Anbei town, and it's even further to the county city. Moreover, this village doesn't have a carriage. We can't buy one even if we want to. When Qin Shu came over, he happened to hear this. He said, "Our village doesn't have a carriage, but the village chief has an ox cart. After dinner, I'll help you borrow it." Okay. Qin Shu was still very happy to be able to help them. He was also talkative. When they were eating, he asked them curiously where they came from, what the prefectural city outside was like, if they had been to the capital or seen any big shots. He had many questions, and the yearning he revealed made Yundong think of Yun Shu. When she was still in Gu village, Xianxia's eyes were filled with desire and curiosity for the outside world. Therefore, she would answer Qin Shu whenever she could. Qin Shu was indeed satisfied. After dinner, he brought the few of them to the village chief's house. Yundong already knew that Qin Shu had lost his parents when he was young. His father had passed away long ago and his mother had remarried. It was said that she had left Qingyuan village and gone outside. No one knew where she was now. Perhaps, this was also one of the reasons why Qin Shu was curious about the outside world. Qin Shu grew up eating from hundreds of families. As he was also a member of the Qin family, the village chief took good care of him. The village chief already knew that Qin Shu had brought a few lost strangers from the depths of the mountains. The village was only so big, so everyone knew about the slightest accident. Compared to Qin Shu's pure enthusiasm, the village chief was clearly much more cautious. He sized up the 3 people standing in front of him. Although they were all wearing rough clothes, it was not difficult to tell that these 3 people were people who lived extremely well. Dai Wenhuo, in particular, was much more distinguished than the young masters of the rich families he had seen in the county city. As the village chief watched, he felt uncomfortable. He shifted his body slightly to control the urge to stand up and give up his seat to them. He coughed lightly and asked, "You want to borrow the ox cart to go to the county city?" "Yes." It was Dai Wenhuo who spoke. "Don't worry, village chief. We won't borrow it for nothing. We won't give you any less money." Yundong rubbed her forehead. "Young master, you're too direct." The village chief shifted uncomfortably again. "It's not impossible for you to borrow my ox cart, but who will drive it?" Originally, my son could send you there, but he hasn't been feeling well these 2 days and can't go out. Qinshu immediately said, I can send them there. The village chief glanced at him and said in frustration, You? Are you sure? Chapter 743. She likes this place. Qinshu met the village chief's gaze and suddenly realized something. He immediately lowered his head silently and did not speak. Indeed, the next moment the village chief said speechlessly, You haven't even been to the county city. How can you send them there? You may be unable to find your way back by then. Qinshu scratched his head, feeling a little troubled. After a while he turned around and asked Gu Yundong, I've never been to the county city, but I've been to town. Can I send you to town? There are carriages in town too. You can buy one. Sure. Qinshu's eyes lit up and he suddenly turned to look at the village chief. Village chief, she said that it's okay. The village chief was speechless for a long time. He sighed and said, All right, you can send them off. Qinshu happily went to the backyard to fetch the ox cart, leaving Wenhuo to discuss the price of renting the ox cart with the village chief. In the end, he gave them 1 tael of silver and the village chief sent them out. Actually, Gu Yundong had also thought about not borrowing an ox cart. It was just walking. It was not like she had never walked before. However, she did not know if Daizhong would be able to completely recover tomorrow. Moreover, Shao Qingyuan felt that if the conditions allowed it, he still wanted Gu Yundong to walk less. Fortunately, Daizhong was much better when the group set off early the next morning. Other than his slightly swollen face, there was nothing uncomfortable about him. He was not even willing to take the ox cart and insisted on walking by himself. It was Wenhuo who shouted at him. Gu Yundong was the last to leave the Qin family's courtyard. When no one was paying attention, she placed 2 bags of rice and flour into the rice jar in the kitchen. They were all taken out from her spatial storage. With the hiking bag as a cover, Qinshu would only think that she had taken it out of her bag. The Qin family's conditions were really not good. The 5 of them ate at his house twice and finished the last bit of flour. This child was too generous. Seeing that they were all grown men, he gave them a lot. As he only took out coarse grain buns, he felt very embarrassed. Fortunately, there were no outsiders in this village. Otherwise, this kid would probably be robbed. However, it could be seen that although there were not many people in Qinnan village, their relationship was very harmonious. Otherwise, Qinshu, who had no parents since he was young, would not have developed such a personality. He had probably received the care and help of the villagers since he was young and was filled with gratitude. Moreover, she heard a neighbor quietly come over and ask Qinshu if there was enough food at home. After putting down the rice and flour, Gu Yundong came out with the hiking bag. The ox cart was already set up, but there were too many people. It was impossible for everyone to sit on it. Gu Yundong was a woman, so Shao Qingyuan was the first to help her up. In addition to Daizhong, there were only 2 people in the carriage. Even Qinshu could not sit. The farmers cherished the ox very much. If it was not necessary, they could not bear for it to suffer. If it were not for the injured and the woman among them, Qinshu would not have helped to borrow the ox cart from the village chief's house. The group walked towards the entrance of the village. On the way, many people from the village looked at them curiously. Gu Yundong looked over. These people smiled, and some children hid away shyly. Gu Yundong suddenly liked this village very much. It was a very peaceful, simple, and friendly village. Although it was remote, it actually felt like a paradise. It was only when they were outside the village that Gu Yundong slowly retracted her gaze and looked at the narrow road that led to town. Although they had set off early in the morning, the journey was really long. It was not until noon that they finally arrived at Anbei town. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 744. A few people passed compared to Qinnan village. Anbei town was much livelier. Qinshu had been very excited since he entered the town. He had never been to the county city. Even the number of times he had come to Anbei town could be counted on 10 fingers. However, he restrained his excitement and introduced it to Gu Yundong and the others. The second intersection over here is the largest restaurant in Anbei town. I heard that the food there is especially delicious, especially the braised fish. It's fragrant and tender. The fish were caught from our Tong Lake alive. There's an inn on the right. It's also the best in town. I heard that the best first-class rooms even have incense. There's also a school there. The teacher is a high scholar. He's very awesome. By the way, if you want to buy a carriage, it's over there. There's a carriage shop. They rent and sell carriages. The village chief told me that the shop's price is very fair. You won't be afraid of being scammed. As he spoke, Qianxu drove the ox cart towards that carriage. However, he was stopped by Gu Yundong. It's already noon. There's no hurry to go to the carriage shop. Let's go eat first. That works too. Gu Yundong said, let's go to the restaurant you mentioned just now. Since we're here, let's try the delicious braised fish you mentioned. Qianxu could not help but swallow his saliva. Without saying anything, he drove the ox cart towards the restaurant. They stopped 5 to 6 meters away from the restaurant. He said, go over. It's not good to park an ox cart in front of the restaurant. I'll wait for you here. I'll bring you to the carriage shop after you're done eating. You're not going? David was about to leave when he paused. Qianxu smiled and nodded. I brought some dry food. David held his forehead and pulled him forward. Let's eat together. You've treated us to 2 meals. Can't we treat you to a meal? But... Qianxu was stunned for a moment and said worriedly, that restaurant is very expensive. You're not the only one eating. Qianxu could not break free at all and could only let him lead her forward. The few of them were dressed in clothes that did not look good or rich. Fortunately, the waiter in the restaurant was not the kind of snobbish person. He was only slightly stunned for a moment before leading them inside. When they arrived in town, it would be Dai Wenhuo home ground. He directly asked the waiter to find a private room on the 2nd floor for them. The first thing he ordered was the braised fish that Qianxu had mentioned. However, after the food was served, everyone took a bite and felt that it was ordinary. Hence, almost everyone only touched their chopsticks once before stopping. At first, Qianxu was too embarrassed to eat, but seeing that everyone was not eating anymore, he felt that he could not waste it. He gritted his teeth and moved his chopsticks. In the end, almost the entire fish went into his stomach. He felt that it was very delicious and thought that he could tell everyone when he got back. This restaurant's braised fish was indeed worthy of its reputation. After eating and drinking their fill, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Although the food in this restaurant was not good, it was still much hotter and more delicious than the food in the mountains. Qianxu was very embarrassed. He seemed to have eaten quite a lot too. At this moment, he did not rest anymore. He stood up and said, Independent Illinois, go pull the ox out first. After the few of them entered the restaurant, the waiter brought the ox to the backyard to eat grass. He hurriedly stood up and opened the door of the private room. A few people happened to pass by outside and were shocked by his sudden action. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 745. Very similar. One of them saw that Qianxu was dressed in tattered clothes and could not help but scold. Be careful. Can you afford to compensate if you bump into him? As soon as he finished speaking, Shao Qingyuan suddenly raised his head and looked at the man who spoke. His eyes narrowed. Dai Wenhuo, who was beside him, wanted to retort, but Shao Qingyuan stopped him. Those people only said this before leaving. Qianxu also hurried out of the private room and went to the backyard to fetch the ox cart. As soon as the door of the private room closed, Dai Wenhuo looked at Shao Qingyuan, who had a serious expression on his face. Why are you stopping me? Gu Yundong said at the same time. Do you know the man who spoke? Shao Qingyuan was actually a little uncertain. His voice sounds familiar, and his eyes are very similar. After a pause, he turned to Gu Yundong and said, Do you still remember that we encountered a group of robbers on the way to Qingyuan Prefecture with the escort agency to transport the 4 jars of wine from the Tao family? You mean? Shao Qingyuan nodded. Back then, the leader of the robbers said a few words. I heard it, and it was the same voice as that person just now. Although their faces were covered back then, their eyes were exposed. The man's eyes were also very similar to that person's just now. When they encountered the robbers back then, although they were all safe and sound in the end, those people really wanted their lives. If Gu Yundong had not put the 4 jars of wine into the space on the spot, the robbers would have thought that they had robbed an empty carriage and turned around to leave. Perhaps they would have been injured or killed. Later on, this matter was reported to the government office. The government office also sent people to investigate, but unfortunately, they found nothing. After Shao Qingyuan and the others returned to Fengkai County, they had also told Tao Feng, the eldest son of the Tao family. Unfortunately, Tao Feng didn't have any clues, so they still didn't know where these robbers had come from or where they had escaped to. However, he did not expect to see someone suspected of being a robber in this small Anbei town. Shall we go and take a look? Shao Qingyuan nodded and followed Gu Yundong out. However, he was stopped by Dai Wenhuo. Since he's seen you before, you'll be easily discovered if you go. He called Dai Yi. Follow them and take a look. Be careful not to be discovered. Yes. Dai Yi quickly left the private room and Shao Qingyuan sat back down. Dai Yi had experience in this aspect, so it was indeed more suitable for him to go. After a quarter of an hour, Dai Yi returned. His expression was a little serious, but he shook his head at them and said, "There's nothing unusual. They should just be here to eat." Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other and did not ask further. They stood up and said, "Let's go down first. Qin Shu must be anxious." The few of them went downstairs. As expected, Qin Shu was already waiting outside the restaurant. He was lowering his head and chatting with the cow, looking very happy. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan walked in front, while Dai Wenhuo was a few steps behind. Then, Dai Yi whispered into his ear. Dai Wenhuo's expression suddenly changed. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, he might be related to the guy we're looking for." Dai Wenhuo sneered. In that case, this trip was not completely fruitless. "Young master, should we?" Dai Wenhuo raised his hand. "Keep an eye on them for now. Check their footholds. If they're really related, it's best to follow the trail to where they hid the thing deep in the mountains." "Yes." Dai Yi took a few steps back and turned to leave. Only then did Dai Wenhuo quickly walk forward and catch up to Shao Qingyuan and the others. Chapter 746. What you should have. Qin Shu quickly realized that someone was missing. Dai Wenhuo only explained, "I asked him to buy some things." Qin Shu nodded and believed it, but Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan did not. Dai Yi's expression was not right when he returned just now. He must have kept something to himself. However, they also knew that Dai Wenhuo and Qin Wenjing had tried their best not to involve them. The less they knew, the better. Everyone tacitly ignored the abnormality and went to the carriage shop to buy a carriage. Gu Yundong originally wanted to rent one, but she had encountered the robber previously. In order to avoid more trouble, she bought a carriage and drove back. Seeing that his mission was completed, Qin Shu heaved a huge sigh of relief and sat on the ox cart with a smile. "Brother Shao, Brother Dai, Sister Gu, this is it. I wish you all a safe journey. Sister Gu, thank you for telling me so much about the outside world. I'll remember your words. Goodbye." He was about to leave when Gu Yundong pulled him aside and gave him 10 taels of silver. "We're the ones who should thank you. Take this as our food and accommodation expenses. You can keep it." Qin Shu widened his eyes and quickly retracted his hand. "No need, no need. Didn't you treat me to a meal too? I'm already very satisfied after coming to such a good restaurant and eating braised fish. I can't accept this." "Take it," Gu Yundong insisted. "This is what you deserve. If you really don't want it, then buy something for the people in your village. Didn't you say that they helped you a lot? You can help them now." But this wasn't his money. Even if he helped, he wouldn't be the one helping. But Qin Shu could not win against Gu Yundong's decision. After some thought, he could only say, Then I'll use this silver to buy some rice, flour, grains, and oil and send them to the uncles and aunties in the village. I'll say that you gave them to me." "Up to you." If she gave him the money, it would be his. How he dealt with it was his own business. Qin Shu heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did he feel that the silver in his hand was not so hot. However, he was still happy in his heart. After bidding farewell to Gu Yundong and the others, he took the money to buy food, cloth, and daily necessities. He placed them in the ox cart and transported them back. When they returned to the village, someone immediately realized that there were many things on the carriage. Qin Shu chuckled and said that these were all given by those guests. Then, he asked the village chief to help distribute them to everyone. The village chief knew that these were definitely for Qingshu alone. Only this silly boy would take them all out to share. However, he knew how to be grateful. He knew how to repay his uncles and aunts in the village. It was still very gratifying. The villagers were all sensible people. Some of them refused to accept it and said that they had not helped much. However, if they did not accept it, Qingshu simply left it at the village chief's house. The village chief was speechless. In the end, it was the village chief who spoke up and helped to distribute them. After that, there was still a lot left for Qingshu to bring back. When Qingshu returned home and opened the rice jar, he realized that there were 2 large bags of rice and flour inside. For a moment, his eyes were a little moist. He thought that if he had the chance to see Sister Gu again in the future, he would definitely repay her well. These were all things for another time. On the other side, after Gu Yundong and the others parted ways with Qingshu, they drove the carriage back. Dai Yi had yet to return. Although Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan did not say anything, they were very slow. It was not until the next afternoon that Dai Yi rode his horse over. Chapter 747. Coax Him. After 2 days of recuperation, Dai Zhong had completely recovered. As soon as Dai Yi arrived, he leaned over and whispered into Dai Wenhuo's ear. The latter's expression instantly turned serious. He said to Shao Qingyuan directly, "I have something urgent to attend to and have to leave first. I can't return to Fengkai County with you guys. I'm sorry." Shao Qingyuan naturally wouldn't stop him. "All right, let's meet in the prefectural city another day. Until next time." Until next time. He cupped his fists at Shao Qingyuan and nodded at Gu Yundong. Then, he took the horse that Dai Yi had brought over. He flipped over and jumped. He suddenly shook the reins and ran away like lightning. Dai Yi and Dai Zhong bade farewell to the 2 of them and immediately followed. Not long after, the 3 of them rode further and further away and disappeared from Gu Yundong's sight. She and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other and shrugged. "Looks like we have to go back ourselves." The 2 of them didn't ask or be curious about what urgent matter Dai Wenhuo had. However, without waiting for Dai Yi, the 2 of them were still much faster. 2 days later, the carriage finally arrived at the town where Yongfu village belonged, Qingyuan town. Looking at the familiar place, Gu Yundong took a deep breath and relaxed. She made Shao Qingyuan slow down. "I just returned to Yongfu village for 2 days and am already deep in the mountains. Yunshu will definitely be unhappy if I only go back after so long. I'll buy something to coax him." Yes, perhaps her father had also returned from the prefectural city. She felt that it was probably not enough to buy 1 or 2 things. She would see if there were any novel things in this town. Due to the different directions, they didn't need to pass through Fengkai County to return from Anbei town. They directly returned to town. Therefore, if they wanted to buy anything, they could only choose from town. Between the town and the county city, Gu Yundong was more familiar with the county city. She had only visited the town a few times. Now, she realized that there seemed to be a few more shops in this town that sold canned food. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan went in to take a look. Although the shop assistant was enthusiastic, the can was different from her product. She held the bottle to her nose and smelled it. She even smelled a strange smell. This was because the seal was not done properly. Enduring her discomfort, she quickly ran out. She was no longer curious about the canned food in the other shops. She should focus on choosing a gift for Yunshu. Every time she picked a gift, Gu Yundong felt like her head was going bald. She had a terrible headache. However, there were not many novel things in this town. They were not even as many as in her spatial storage. Gu Yundong stopped in her tracks. Yes, she could make a few things according to the things in the space, just like the puzzle from before. Whether it was her mother, Yunshu, Yunka, or even her father, they were all very interested. What did children like? Gu Yundong thought about it and her eyes lit up. Got it. She would get someone to make it when she got back. Gu Yundong felt slightly relieved now that she had an idea. Just as she was about to get back into the carriage, someone patted her on the shoulder. She turned around in surprise and saw Shao Qingyuan pointing at a stall not far away. Well, Yunshu will like it. Gu Yundong looked in the direction he was pointing and saw a kite stall. All kinds of colorful kites swayed slightly in the breeze, as if they were waving at you. But Gu Yundong looked at a shop at the back through an angle revealed by the shaking kite. Chapter 748.
Reluctance. Gu Yundong's eyes flashed with joy. She said to Shao Qingyuan, "Wait for me there first. I'll be back soon." Shao Qingyuan wanted to say that he could accompany her to buy it, but Gu Yundong had already run out. However, someone asked him to make way from behind, so Shao Qingyuan could only lead the carriage to the side. But when he looked up again, Gu Yundong was nowhere to be seen. The kite stall was still there, but Gu Yundong was not there. Didn't she go to buy a kite? Where did she go? At this moment, Gu Yundong was already standing in the shop behind the kite stall. This was a shop that sold bows and arrows. Other than bows and arrows, it also sold some materials for bows and arrows. The business looked ordinary, but the shopkeeper sat happily at the door drinking tea and basking in the sun. He did not seem to care much. When he saw Gu Yundong enter, he slowly stood up and asked with a smile, "Miss, do you want to buy a bow or a custom-made bow? How long does it take to customize a bow?" The shopkeeper smiled and said, "That depends on what you need. An ordinary one can be obtained in 10 days to half a month. If you want top-notch materials, it might take half a year to a year." "That long?" Gu Yundong frowned. Wasn't this too long? After some thought, she asked, "Then how much are the best bows and arrows sold here?" "What are you buying the bow and arrow for? Do you learn to use it at home, or do your brothers use it to practice archery, or do you go hunting in the mountains?" In this day and age, there were different types of bows and arrows. In terms of arrows alone, they were determined by the different uses such as combat, field hunting, school review, signals, and so on. Arrows used for combat were not allowed among the commoners. If they were discovered, they would be captured and executed. As for bows, there were also simple and complicated ones. The price was differentiated by the size and material of the bow. If a girl like Gu Yundong needed it, the bow would most likely have some accessories to make it look good. Gu Yundong listened to the shopkeeper's introduction and was a little curious. So there was such a big difference in bows and arrows? However, the bow and arrows she wanted to buy were mainly used for field hunting. She simply wanted it to be durable. The shopkeeper seemed to be in a good mood and took out a few types for her to see. Gu Yundong took them one by one and tried them out. How should I put it? They don't seem to have much feelings. Although she did not use a bow and arrow, she had a crossbow. Once she picked up this crossbow, the blood in her body would faintly become excited. But the bow in front of her did not make her feel so. The shopkeeper saw her serious expression and laughed. "Miss, are you not satisfied with these few? Anything else?" Gu Yundong put down the last bow and asked. The shopkeeper hesitated for a moment before saying, "There's one more." He went to the storeroom at the back and carefully moved one out. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up at the first glance. When she took it and tried it, she nodded hurriedly. "I want this." The shopkeeper clicked his tongue. "I can't even bear to sell this bow. You sure know how to choose. Then are you selling it? If you can't bear to part with it, why are you still taking it out? Who are you lying to?" The shopkeeper snorted. "I'll sell it for 12 taels of silver." Gu Yundong gave him a banknote without hesitation. The shopkeeper immediately beamed with joy. "All right, go ahead and pick the arrows. 80 copper coins for an arrow. At least 20 arrows. Since you didn't bargain, I'll give you 5 for free." Chapter 749. Is that Niu Dan? Gu Yundong could not help but feel emotional. No wonder people said that the poor studied books while the rich practiced martial arts. It was not easy for people without any capital to learn martial arts. She bought 100 arrows in one go. It was a little heavy, so she asked the shopkeeper to help move them into the carriage. Unexpectedly, just as she turned to leave, she saw Shao Qingyuan standing at the door in a daze. Her eyes lit up and she ran to him with her bow. "Why are you here? Why did you buy the bow and arrows?" Shao Qingyuan's voice was low as he asked uncertainly. Gu Yundong's eyes curved into crescents. "Of course they're for you." She handed the bow in her hand to him and went back to get the quiver. The shopkeeper at the side shouted, "Hey miss, you already have someone to help carry it. I'm old so I won't go." Gu Yundong glared at him. "Shopkeeper, I bought so many things, but you didn't even carry them for me. This is not how this business works." Then, she took her quiver and walked to the door to push Shao Qingyuan out. "Let's go, well just take this." The shopkeeper felt that this person was too shameless. She bullied the old man and he regretted giving her those 5 arrows for free.
But he had no choice. He could only follow with the remaining arrows. After the 3 of them carried the bow and arrows into the carriage, Gu Yundong thanked the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper snorted and turned to leave. Gu Yundong shook her head. I'm the only one who doesn't mind. Otherwise, with this attitude, it would be strange if the shop could continue operating. Isn't that right, Brother Shao? As she spoke, she turned around and saw Shao Qingyuan's lips curl up as if he was very happy. What's wrong with you? Gu Yundong waved her hand in front of him, but Shao Qingyuan grabbed her wrist. Gu Yundong was stunned. She quickly looked around and pulled her hand out. We're on the streets. This person was getting bolder. Shao Qingyuan said, I have a bow and arrows. Why are you giving these to me? Your bow and arrows have been used for a long time. Last time, I said that I would give you my crossbow, but you refused. The bow and arrows are the treasure of that shop. I tested the feel of it. It's not bad. How did you feel when you held it just now? Very good. Every gift from her was great. Gu Yundong was relieved. Seeing that his gaze was becoming more and more passionate, he hurriedly coughed and said, I haven't bought my kite yet. I'll go buy a kite. Before she could finish speaking, she quickly fled. Shao Qingyuan looked at her back view, his heart warm. He looked at the bow and clenched it tightly. When Gu Yundong returned, she was holding 4 kites. There were 4 kites and 4 patterns, but the colors were a little monotonous. Gu Yundong wondered if she should go back and paint them by herself. At this moment, her expression was much better. She carried the kites and got into the carriage. Let's go back. The corners of Shao Qingyuan's mouth curled up slightly. He didn't look at her anymore. The carriage drove towards the entrance of the town again. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. When the kites were put down, she lifted the curtain and looked outside. Although the town was not comparable to the county, it was still very lively. But very quickly, this liveliness was heard by Gu Yundong along with this discordant voice. She turned her head slightly and frowned. She quickly said to Shao Qingyuan, Brother Shao, stop the carriage first. As soon as the carriage stopped, Gu Yundong quickly lifted the curtain and pointed at a figure not far away. Is that Niu Dan? Chapter 750. I'll uphold justice for you. Let's go take a look. Shao Qingyuan jumped down from the shaft, and so did Gu Yundong. The 2 of them took a few steps forward and arrived at the entrance of a school. Wasn't this school the Wenhuo hall where she had sent Yunxu over but was not satisfied with that pedantic teacher? Niu Dan was indeed studying here. However, the current Niu Dan was standing outside the school, shouting that he had been wronged. His book basket had fallen to the ground and he did not have time to pick it up. His face was filled with stubbornness, but his eyes were red. He seemed to want to enter the school again to look for the master, but he was stopped by the gatekeeper. There were still a few students standing behind the door, pointing and laughing at him. Gu Yundong's expression darkened. She immediately pushed aside a bystander and called out, Niu Dan. Niu Dan turned his head. When he saw that it was Gu Yundong, the emotions that he had been suppressing instantly collapsed. As if he finally had someone to rely on, he burst into tears. Large drops of tears fell. Sister Yundong. Gu Yundong quickly took 2 steps forward, squatted down, patted his shoulder, and wiped his tears with a handkerchief. What's wrong? What happened? Tell me. I'll help you. For a moment, Niu Dan cried a little hard and couldn't stop. Therefore, before he could speak, a few students behind the door started shouting loudly. He stole something. He stole 50 copper coins and was chased out by the teacher. Niu Dan immediately shook his head with all his might. He wanted to explain, but he hiccuped. He was immediately angry and anxious, and his tears fell even more fiercely. Gu Yundong hurriedly patted him. There's no hurry. Tell me slowly. I believe you didn't steal anything. Niu Dan had been in denial for most of the day. Gu Yundong was the first person to say that she believed him without any explanation. All the grievances seemed to be unimportant at that moment. Someone believed in him. There was no need for him to say anything. There was no need for any evidence. Someone stood on his side without any worries. Niu Dan felt that it was enough. His emotions gradually stabilized. Although he was still sobbing, he could clearly say something. I didn't steal it. I really didn't. My father gave me those 50 copper coins. My father said that I've been studying very hard recently and that I've improved. He rewarded me and told me to buy what I wanted. I just haven't thought of what to buy, so I kept those 50 copper coins with me. It's useless. He wiped his face. But today, Shao Quan suddenly said that he had lost money. Then they searched everywhere. In the end, they found 50 copper coins in my book basket and said that I had stolen it. Teacher, the teacher said that I was immoral and had a bad character. He chased me out of the school. My 50 copper coins were also taken away. As he spoke, he felt aggrieved again. Niu Dan couldn't take it anymore and cried. When the others heard this, they whispered to each other. However, the few students behind the door shouted, "You were the one who stole it. How could you say that your father rewarded you? Who doesn't know that you're a poor boy from the countryside? Is your father so generous that he gave you 50 copper coins to spend as you please? No one will believe this." That's right, that's right. If your father really dotes on you, would he be willing to let you work for the family every weekend? The teacher has already told you several times to focus on your studies and not be affected by other things, but you refuse to listen. Just the rise of one place on the ranking was considered improvement? Is your father willing to give you so much money? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 751. Tear down your school. I got 3rd place last time. My father only gave me 5 copper coins to buy candy. My family owns a shop in town. How dare your father give you 50 copper coins? Are you kidding me? You stole Shao Quan's money. Don't deny it. It's useless even if you call your sister over. Do you think she dares to settle scores with the teacher? Our teacher is an elementary scholar, and your sister is just a country bumpkin. The veins on Gu Yundong's forehead throbbed as she listened. Niu Dan was even more anxious. Not only did these people scold and slander him, they even slandered Sister Yundong. They were too much. However, Shao Qingyuan raised his head and looked at the students with a sharp and cold gaze. Among the few students, the oldest was only 13 or 14 years old. Once Shao Qingyuan became ferocious, he could even scare an adult man, let alone these bookworms who only knew how to act tough and never see the world. Immediately, someone trembled and took a few steps back. The others suddenly stopped shouting and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Niu Dan looked at Gu Yundong uneasily. Sister Yundong, It's fine. I'll seek justice for you. Putting aside the fact that Niu Dan often came to her house and called her elder sister all day long, his enthusiastic look made Gu Yundong treat him as a younger brother. He had such a good relationship with Yunxu. His father worked in her workshop and his grandfather was Chen Liang. She could not ignore it. No matter what, she had to clear his name and take back the money that belonged to him. Gu Yundong believed that Niu Dan had 50 copper coins as pocket money. This was the red packet she had given Chen Jinbao. At that time, she heard Chen Jinbao mutter that Niu Dan had been improving in his studies recently and he would give him a reward. She patted Niu Dan's shoulder and stood up. She looked at the gatekeeper and said, "Call your teacher out." The gatekeeper snorted. "You think you can tell me what to do?" The gatekeeper seemed to be different from the one Yundong had seen before. Compared to this, the gatekeeper from last time was much more polite. Shao Qingyuan saw his arrogant look and suddenly took 2 steps closer to him, kicking the door behind him. "Go and call him." "You, how dare you? Do you know what this place is?" Shao Qingyuan looked at him coldly. "I'll give you 10 seconds. If I don't see the teacher, I'll tear down your school." The gatekeeper's expression changed. Seeing that the man did not seem to be joking, he could only point at him with a trembling finger. You wait." Then, he quickly turned around and stumbled to call for help. Niu Dan looked at Shao Qingyuan in a daze. He used to be very afraid of him. He had personally seen Shao Qingyuan throw a child into the water and almost drown him. After listening to Yunxi's brainwashing, his impression of Shao Qingyuan changed slightly, but he was still afraid. Who knew that Sister Yundong would be engaged to him? Niu Dan felt that this was like a dream. For this reason, he didn't dare to go to the Gu family for a few days. Later on, even if he went to the Gu family and often met Shao Qingyuan, he never spoke to him. However, he did not expect that one day,
this man called Wolf Cub would actually stand in front of him. He was so tall and majestic like a mountain, as if he could help him block all the wind and rain. Niu Dan felt that he was actually not scary at all. He felt that he had let the man down by calling him a wolf cub in the past. He felt a little sad. At this moment, the gatekeeper came out with the master of the academy. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 752. Your request is strange. Before the teacher reached the door, he said angrily, "Who dares to cause trouble here?" The gatekeeper followed behind him. He pointed in the direction of Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong and added fuel to the fire. It's them. They seem to be Chen Jingwen's siblings. They heard that Chen Jingwen was chased out of the school and came over to defend him. Chen Jingwen did such an unbearable thing and didn't allow anyone to say it. That man almost kicked the door down. The other students, who were so frightened by Shao Qingyuan that they did not dare to speak, also went forward to complain as if they had found a backer. That's right, teacher. They're barbarians. No wonder Chen Jingwen dared to steal money. It's because his family has such a brother and sister who can't differentiate right from wrong. His sister also said that no matter what Chen Jingwen said, she would believe him. The master's expression was ugly. He stood at the door in a few steps. He glanced at Shao Qingyuan, then his cold gaze landed on Niu Dan. He was a teacher after all. Niu Dan was a little afraid of him and subconsciously took a small step back. Gu Yundong sneered and took 2 steps forward. She looked at the teacher and said, "The teacher is here. That's good. I want to ask, do you have any evidence that our Chen Jingwen stole someone else's money?" The teacher frowned. He did not talk to women. Hence, he looked at Shao Qingyuan. "Are you Chen Jingwen's brother?" Shao Qingyuan couldn't even be bothered to look at him. The teacher immediately said angrily, "I'm talking to you. Don't you even know the most basic etiquette?" Shao Qingyuan finally gave him a look and said, "She's talking to you. Are you deaf?" "You!" The teacher was so angry that his chest heaved. After a long while he said, "I don't talk to women. I don't talk to brainless people." Gu Yundong almost laughed out loud. Shao Qingyuan's mouth was so sharp. She secretly applauded him. "You're saying that I'm brainless? I'm an elementary scholar. I'm a dignified elementary scholar. I'm rich and knowledgeable. To be able to teach here, compared to a country bumpkin like you, our difference is simply heaven and earth. You actually say that I'm brainless." Gu Yundong finally could not help but laugh. This is the first time I've heard someone praise themselves so exaggeratedly in front of so many people without batting an eyelid. How shameless. What did you say? This time, he was willing to talk to the woman. Gu Yundong smiled. "As expected, you're deaf. I say, you're shameless." "Say that again." Gu Yundong was surprised. "This is the first time I've heard such a strange request. Since you're so sincere, I'll reluctantly repeat again. I say you're shameless." The teacher was so angry that he almost fainted. If not for the gatekeeper supporting him from behind, he would have fallen to the ground and made a fool of himself. However, he was still so angry that he could not say a word. Gu Yundong asked, "Can we talk nicely now? If not, I won't stand on ceremony." The teacher's expression became even uglier. This was a threat. A threat. He did not expect this woman to be so shameless and despicable at such a young age. Then I'll ask again. Why did the teacher conclude that Chen Jingwen stole the 50 copper coins? Why did he think that the 50 copper coins were not given to him by his father? Where's the evidence? On the basis that he has a criminal record and is a habitual thief. Before the teacher could speak, a cold shout suddenly came from inside. Immediately after, Gu Yundong saw a familiar figure walk out. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 753. Unworthy of being a teacher. After the figure came out, the teacher immediately stepped forward and asked, "Madam, why are you here?" Madam's son said, "I heard that a woman was present. I thought that you would definitely be troubled, so I came out to take a look." The teacher sighed and nodded. "That's true. This woman is very tricky." Gu Yundong almost burst out laughing when she heard that.
Were the two of them out of their minds? Would he be put in a difficult position just because she was present? Was it difficult for her to ask two questions? Madame Sun had already turned around and looked straight at Gu Yundong. She said, "If you have any questions, you can ask me. You don't have to hold on to my husband." Gu Yundong chuckled. "Who was holding on to your husband?" It was as if she had taken a fancy to this old man. This woman felt too good about herself. "All right, since you two are husband and wife, I want stand on ceremony." Her eyes darkened. That moment of coldness actually made Madame Sun a little afraid. "Did you just say that Chen Jingwen is a habitual thief?" Gu Yundong sneered. "What else has he stolen? Since such a thing has happened in the past, why didn't you deal with it in the past and chase him out of school?" Madame Sun did not expect her to hit the nail on the head the moment she spoke. She immediately choked. After a moment, she raised her chin slightly and said, "In the past, it was because there was no evidence." "You call him a habitual thief without any evidence?" Gu Yundong was simply shocked by their train of thought. "So this is what you teach here. Just because Chen Jingwen is a country boy, he is the suspect whenever anything is stolen. Then, he's called a habitual thief without any evidence showing that he stole anything. Then, based on that, he's guilty again when some student lost something, and he's chased out of school without even having the chance to explain himself." Gu Yundong burst out laughing and looked at the surrounding crowd. "Did you hear that, everybody? I thought that the teacher of this Wenhuo Hall was just pedantic. Now I realize that he's not pedantic, but blind, paranoid, arrogant, irresponsible and self-righteous. Teacher? Can someone like him be a teacher? If his students become high scholars and officials in the future, they will make groundless judgments based on their guesses too, right? How many innocent people will go to prison? This is simply disregarding human lives." The onlookers couldn't help but nod. That's right. The teacher and his wife said that the child was a thief, but where was the evidence? To be honest, I used to think that this teacher was different from the other teachers I saw in other schools. He was always mysterious. When a woman brought a child to his door, he looked like he had seen a rat or a cockroach. It was as if everyone would like him. I think so too. I don't think the teachers of the other schools are as hard to satisfy as him. This girl is right. They're spreading this news without any evidence. Just now, this child was crying so miserably over there. One look and you can tell that he was wronged. This teacher is like a dog. Look at what that Madame Sun is saying. Habitual thief? So it's all based on their own guesses. Then, if my family lost a chicken, can it be said that they stole it? Anyway, I saw her pass by my house, so I guessed so. When Madame Sun heard the dissatisfied voices of the surrounding crowd, she saw that they were all standing on Gu Yundong's side. She immediately said angrily, But I have witnesses. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 754. The so-called witness. As soon as he said that, the whispers in the surroundings instantly stopped. Everyone looked at each other. Witness? Gu Yundong also raised her eyebrows. Witness? Where are they? Madame Sun sneered and shouted into the door. "Sister-in-law Wu, tell me, is this Chen Jingwen dirty? Did he steal your things in the past?" There was no movement inside the door for a long time. After a long time, a figure slowly walked out. Gu Yundong was stunned. It was her? Chen Yulan's husband, Wu Chong's mother. Madame Wu dawdled to Madame Sun's side. Madame Sun looked at Gu Yundong and said, "Madame Wu's daughter-in-law is Chen Jingwen's cousin. The last time her son got married, Chen Jingwen also went. In the end, there were a few gifts missing from the house. Later, they found out that Chen Jingwen took them all. Isn't he used to stealing?" Chen Jingwen was also stunned. Of course, he knew Madame Wu. After hearing Madame Sun's words, he hurriedly shook his head and said, I didn't take her things at all." Gu Yundong found it extremely funny. She looked at Madame Wu coldly. "I'll say it again. Where's the evidence?" Madame Wu felt a little guilty. She stammered and whispered, "It's been so long. Where's the evidence?" "Oh, so this is still your guess?" Madame Wu could not raise her head. Gu Yundong's teasing gaze landed on the teacher. The way Master Wen handles things is really impressive.
On one hand, he says that he doesn't talk to women, but on the other hand, he can suspect his student of stealing and chase him out of the school because of a woman's unreasonable guess. The teacher trusts this anti-Wu very much. I'm impressed. Master Wen's expression changed drastically and he quickly explained, I didn't. Just what? Yes. He had indeed listened to his wife's words, which was why he did not have a good impression of Chen Jingguan. And his wife had also listened to Madame Wu's words and made pillow talk. At the end of the day, the cause was indeed Madame Wu. Master Wen was furious. He suddenly looked at Madame Wu and said, Tell me, why are you so sure that he stole your things? Under everyone's gaze, Madame Wu knew that if she did not say anything, she would probably not be able to raise her head in the future. She secretly took a deep breath and suddenly raised her head. It was Chen Jingguan who stole it. Back then, only he ran into the room where the gift was placed. The thing was gone. If it wasn't him, who took it? I'm an adult. I have no grudges with such a child. There's no reason to wrong him, right? No reason. Gu Yundong sneered. How can there be no reason? Is it not a reason that the Wu family and the Chen family to fall out? Is it not a reason that your son wants to take in a concubine and the Chen family doesn't allow it and comes to your house to settle scores? Your Wu family is in the wrong first. You don't dare to look for the adults, so you schemed against a child. How impressive. After Gu Yundong was done, she looked at Madame Sun. So she is your witness, right? This is truly an eye-opener. She made up stuff in front of you because of personal grudges, and you lambasted an innocent child based on that. In the end, your husband blamed everything on him and chased him out of school. Elementary scholar? Teacher? You're simply ruining the kids. Pooey, disgusting. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 755. Admitting mistake. Madame Sun's expression changed. She looked at Madame Wu, hoping that she would say more, but Madame Wu was simply making something out of nothing. Facing Gu Yundong's pressure, Madame Wu did not have any confidence. She could only grit her teeth and hold her hands tightly. However, her mind was blank and she could not find any words to refute. Master Wen almost fainted. He felt more and more people around him, and the way they looked at him was getting worse. Even the students who had run out to watch the show began to whisper. Gu Yundong looked at Master Wen. Say something. Where's the evidence? Did a dog eat your conscience when you were hurting a child like this? You don't pester me here. Because you can't reason with me. You say that I'm pestering you endlessly. Let everyone be the judge. Who's in the wrong in this matter? Who's pestering someone else endlessly and refusing to admit their mistake? Who's disregarding human lives and ruining a child's future? After Gu Yundong finished speaking, someone beside him immediately shouted, I say, Master Wen, you said that the child was a thief. Show me the evidence. That's right. What right do you have to say that the child's father can't give him 50 copper coins as a reward? I even gave my child a tael of silver as New Year's money. I think he just thinks that the child is easy to bully because he came from the countryside and doesn't have a backer. He might as well find a scapegoat. You think you can be a teacher and educate others? Fortunately, my child hasn't come here to study. These few days, I'm thinking of sending my child over to be enlightened. Forget it. I'll go back and find another school. Fortunately, you didn't send your child over. Otherwise, if something was missing from the school, they might even chase your child out. There were more and more voices, and they were getting louder. At this moment, Master Wen wished he could find a hole to hide in. Madame Sun glared at Madame Wu fiercely, angry that she was actually using her. In the end, he had no choice. Seeing that the accusations around him were getting louder and louder, Master Wen was afraid that the entire town would be attracted over. He could only take a deep breath and say, This is indeed my mistake. I misjudged Chen Jingguan. After saying that, he looked at Chen Jingguan and said, The decision to expel you from the school is cancelled. You're still a student of Wenhuo Hall. Come back to class with me. Gu Yundong wanted to spit in his face. You want to let it go so easily after wronging someone? No way. She looked down at Niu Dan beside her. Are you going back to school? Gu Yundong did not want him to continue, but Niu Dan was not her biological younger brother after all.
She could not decide for him on this matter. Unexpectedly, Niu Dan shook his head vigorously. I'm not going. I'm not going to this school to study anymore. Gu Yundong rubbed his head and smiled. She looked up. Did you hear that? When Master Wen heard this, he nodded regretfully. Since you've decided, I won't force you. I was your teacher, and I hope that your future will be bright. With that, he turned around and walked in impatiently. However, he had just taken a step when Shao Qingyuan suddenly reached out to stop him. Master Wen was stunned and suddenly looked up. What else do you want? Master Wen is really interesting. Since you admit that you wronged Chen Jingguan and cleared him of the crime of stealing something, shouldn't you return the 50 copper coins? Master Wen's body stiffened. He turned around abruptly. You. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible.